And welcome back to RSBN Live. You are watching there, if you're watching the other stream, of course, this subcommittee hearing on everything regarding Doge. And of course, Marjorie Taylor Greene leading that extraordinary organization to really fight back against the government waste and corruption. As she mentioned, $36 trillion in debt. That's where this nation's current debt status is at. And of course, Elon Musk, someone who's gone in and found already the fraud and corruption that exist in its almost entirety in so many different places. And he will continue to seek and sift and find what is out there. But all because of this corruption, as you heard from the experts on that panel, you need to protect your family. So go to Colonial Metals Group and get this free 2025 guide to gold and silver. If you scan the QR code there on your screen, you will find that you have many options to protect yourself against inflation. Now, gold is up over 7,000% in its value. This is the rising price of gold since 1971, when we left that gold standard. So between 71 and now 2024, leading into 2025, of course, the value is up over 7,000%. We've had Paul Stone, the CEO of this wonderful company, on RSBN Network Live, and this is your go-to against inflation. Gold, silver, precious metals, whether you have properties or different assets, or even a 401k or IRA that you want to roll into these plans, take the no obligation step now of getting that free 2025 gold guide. Thank you to Colonial Metals Group. And for a programming note, we will have this news stream that you're on for Tulsi Gabbard's vote that will be in the U.S. Senate forthcoming. So that will be a vote for her to become the next Secretary of the Department of National Intelligence. And what a turnaround of events. She was spied on by the Biden administration, all because she spoke out against the Bush-Obama-Biden foreign policy of nation building, of spying on not only foreign adversaries, but local and domestic adversaries without warrants. So this is a person who has stood up for the rule of law, who has stood against nation building and the globalist foreign policy, and she's definitely paid the price for it. I can remember in 2020 when she ran for president as a Democrat, she took on then Senator Kamala Harris and riddled her with the appropriate questions of, why did you put people in jail when Kamala Harris was a DA of San Francisco, of course, on low-level drug crimes when they didn't have access to an attorney, when they did not have access to a speedy trial because of the system? But then she went on to a podcast to brag about her own personal marijuana use. Tulsi Gabbard took her to task, and she's someone, as a former congresswoman and someone that's a veteran, always focused on, as Pete Hegseth will say on a regular basis, our Secretary of Defense, it's not about Republican and Democrat or the color of your skin, your background, your philosophy, sexual orientation. When you're on the fighting force, the meritocracy of the United States military, it's about defending the Constitution and our founding documents against all enemies, foreign and domestic. This is something that Ms. Gabbard holds near and dear to her heart. And it led her away from the Democrat Party to become one of the great independent voices in this country. And ultimately, this past summer, as you saw in North Carolina, with President Trump at a campaign stop, and it came to a surprise for him as well, she announced that she was joining the Republican Party. So we have that vote forthcoming for you here at Right Side Broadcasting, and what 24 hours it has been in the news cycle. So you had President Trump joined by Elon Musk and Elon's son X. Yes, his son's name is X, just like the application there that you might use for social media. And they were talking about the efficiencies of Doge and finding all of the government waste, fraud, and corruption. If you're watching the last hour with the other stream, of course, Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia laying out this wonderful opportunity, thanks to James Comer of Kentucky, to help assist President Trump's effort and Elon Musk's effort in finding all the waste, abuse, and fraud in the federal government. And we need entitlement reform. It's very clear that, as Elon said yesterday from the Oval Office next to President Trump at the Resolute desk, this is essential for national security. The egregious spending of different sorts were going to foreign entities. They weren't even helping our residents here and American citizens. We saw that President Trump has recently visited Western North Carolina and the Golden State, the Pacific Palisades in Southern California from those wildfires. And then Hurricane Helene, of course, went up all the way to Virginia, and Vice President J.D. Vance, before his Paris, France trip at the AI Summit, of course, attending Western Virginia with the wonderful Glenn Youngkin, the great governor out of our wonderful state of Virginia. Virginia is for lovers and needs recovery efforts, and FEMA has failed on a grand scale, and President Trump looking to reform that agency as well in conjunction with DOJ and everyone in his administration. So you have someone who really wants to scale back the size and scope of government, and we can remember that President Ronald Reagan, even before he was in office, the great communicator, mentioning that and speaking in support of Barry Goldwater at the time, the 1964 Rendezvous with Destiny speech, that the closest thing to eternal life on earth is perhaps a government program. Well, this administration definitely turning that idea on its head, and thank God for that, because we're in a situation right now that where we could default. I mean, $36 trillion in debt. It's an incomprehensible number. But President Trump addressing that with the great Elon Musk. Also yesterday, you may have seen Representative Anna Paulina Luna with Representative James Comer, and they have announced also another committee that will be bipartisan in order to get to the bottom of the secrets that your government was potentially holding over your head. And this is things like the JFK assassination, MLK assassination, the RFK assassination, details about 9/11, also other secrets that were held by the FBI and CIA, and that military-industrial complex in the modern era post-World War II. This will be a very interesting committee to watch as things continue. And even Representative Anna Paulina Luna mentioning yesterday some details we might not have known in the past regarding the JFK assassination in 1963 in Dallas, Texas. So we'll be keeping a watch on that here on RSBN Live as President Trump, 23 days in office, he greeted Mark Fogle yesterday. He was a political prisoner in Russia. He entered the country. This is a history teacher, a middle-class man from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania who has traveled the world teaching a number of different historical topics and languages and different items, the classics, in fact, to other places around the world. And he brought in what was apparently ounces of marijuana. I have not been able to find a state or even federally here where you would be charged 14 years in a criminal sense, but that's happened in Russia. The Biden administration left him to rot. I mean, this man was in a Russian prison. He had over 400 injections, as he talked about yesterday, in the diplomatic room of the White House, meeting with President Trump. Speaker Johnson was there, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Representative Brian Mast, and also Senator Dave McCormick from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania to greet him. No Democrats on hand last night, sadly, as it was just after 10 o'clock p.m. Eastern. The great Matthew Alvarez, my colleague who will be joining us soon today, was doing the late night coverage and was doing an extraordinary job with all of that to bring that to you live here at Right Side Broadcasting. And those who are just tuning in or have been tuning in the last few days or weeks, here at Right Side, we were known for the wonderful rallies that we would show President Trump on the campaign trail. Of course, we've had 2 rallies in 2025, but being that he's in office now, things have changed a bit. You don't have the rallies as often as we once did, but we will be at CPAC next week. Yours truly, joined by Christina Loren and Ashley Brassfield as we go to National Harbor, Maryland, just south of our nation's capital, to enjoy what is a grassroots homecoming and somewhat of a victory celebration, but also a focus on the upcoming 2026 elections as Republicans seek to keep that majority in the House and the Senate and continue to push the MAGA legislative agenda across the finish line. So here at Right Side Broadcasting Network Live, we will bring you unbridled coverage of the Beltway, the 47th president, the 50th vice president, of course, the 119th Congress, as they're in action every day leading up to different recesses. And as we are watching now the confirmations of the cabinet positions as that gets completed. Of course, some Democrats trying to hold back on the nominations, but President Trump slowly but surely getting his nominees over the hump. So we'll bring you everything inside the Beltway and outside the Beltway as well. I'd like to thank our sponsors here at Right Side Broadcasting, PatriotAddictDeals.com. That Trump knife, it is a beautiful, glorious knife, great for one of your collection items that you have at home that might be part of your MAGA wall of fame or MAGA kitchen, maybe the MAGA man cave, as I like to deem mine. But it is RSBN 30 for 30% off this exclusive knife. This will run out, and I have purchased some great items from PatriotAddictDeals.com. Trust me, we're not just saying that. They do get sold out, and then it takes a period of time to get them back. So these are going like hotcakes. RSBN 30 is the code for 30% off this extraordinary Trump combat knife, and a great addition to your MAGA office or the MAGA man cave to celebrate the 45th and 47th President of the United States, Donald John Trump. And we were seeing some things on Truth Social regarding President Trump, who's had quite a busy schedule. He met yesterday with His Majesty King Abdullah II of Jordan, and also the Crown Prince. Secretary of State Marco Rubio was there as well. And a surprise announcement from His Majesty stating that Jordan is ready, willing, and able to accept 2,000 medically sick children into their country, and that's from Gaza. So someone actually making a wonderful point on Instagram that the people who were kidnapped and raped and murdered subsequently from October 7th, 2023, the concert goers in Israel, were those many first responders and ER caretakers, nurses, doctors, and the such, paramedics who were abducted by Hamas, who would care for Gazan children, whether that be Palestinian, Arab, Muslim, Christian, Jew, it did not matter. Gentile, in fact. I mean, it didn't matter what the belief background was. They cared for the people in the Gaza Strip, and that's why hospitals were turned into terrorist headquarters. So they've harmed so many people in the region, whether that be Hamas, Hezbollah to the north in Lebanon, or even the Houthi rebels funded by the Shia in Iran. So King Abdullah II, a moderate Muslim, committed to bringing peace and prosperity to Arab, Christian, and Jew throughout the region. And he really has done so since his reign began in 1999. So a friend of the United States, a friend to many in the region, wanting to right the wrong. And I like to call him the warrior king because he's a fighter pilot. And during the Obama years, as ISIS, the caliphate grew, he actually took to the skies to lead a squadron of an air assault against ISIS. And he said he would do it with or without the United States. So he has appreciated President Trump's commitment to eliminating al-Qaeda and ISIS. And he's had a target on his head since then. Even His Majesty's own cabinet and royal guard saying that, sir, you should not go up there and put yourself in danger. But his response simply was that he had to defend and lead his own people into what was the fight of their lives. You know, it's ISIS and al-Qaeda does not discriminate regardless of background. If they find you to be an enemy, they are ruthless and they are savage, and they will seek to destroy you and your family members. And King Abdullah II has experienced that firsthand. So great bravery leading his team and leading his war leaders against an extreme radical Islamic terrorist faction that seeks to kill in the name of God. So there is a team in the Middle East ready, willing, and able to go, and great to hear from His Majesty willing to accept those refugees into Jordan. There will be further discussions with Riyadh, Egypt, regarding if any of the Egyptian government will take in those approximately 1.8 million Palestinians in Gaza. So that will be forthcoming, and we will watch that here for you at Right Side Broadcasting Network Live. And if you're just joining us, we are 1 minute after 11 o'clock on the East Coast in the nation's capital. It's 8 o'clock for you in the Golden State on the West Coast of this beautiful country. And thank you for bringing us an opportunity to speak with you on this beautiful Wednesday morning, February 12th, 2025, as we look to the confirmation vote for Tulsi Gabbard to become the next Secretary of the Department of National Intelligence. And what a welcome spot that will be as President Trump seeks to complete his national security team. And that includes people like Border Czar Tom Homan and Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem, both who have been on the ground in real time, removing the terrorist, quite frankly, you could call them that, these people who have broken our laws and our rule of law, who have been here illegally. And they've done so with ICE and Border Patrol agents, also in conjunction with our military, the Army Corps of Engineers and Marines on that border, securing the border wall and completing the different holes that might be in them at this time. So what a change in pace compared to the last administration. And Karoline Leavitt, our White House press secretary, doing an extraordinary job, truly batting 1,000 in that role. She had mentioned that border crossings down 87% just the other day. She comes out with MAGA Minute updates on all of the great successes that are happening now 23 days into the new administration. And we are now into the middle of the 4th week of President Donald Trump's 2nd presidency. So an exciting time to be an American. There's no question about that, especially after the difficult nature of the last 4 years. Just to give you an update on the daily guidance and press schedule for President Trump, at 9 a.m. Eastern today, just an in-town pool call time. At 2:30, President Trump will sign executive orders, and we might even have a White House press briefing with Karoline Leavitt herself, and that will be at 1 o'clock. So 1 o'clock upcoming, the press briefing by the White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt, and at 2:30 in the Oval Office, this is closed press, signing the executive order. So we'll see if there's any breaking news. In the meantime, we are awaiting Tulsi Gabbard to be voted on to be the next National Intelligence Secretary, and that will be a very exciting sight to see, as Tulsi Gabbard was someone who was actually spied on by the last administration. There was an operation to monitor her, and this is something that should not happen in America. And I've noticed some people actually commenting on social media regarding the criticisms of the cabinet and the incoming cabinet, who are truly freedom fighters, who, whether or not they were Republicans or Democrats in the past years, they have called out the government waste, the ineptitude, the failures of the last administration. And someone had mentioned today simply, what about the people who called for the lockdowns, who called for vaccine mandates, who did not let you go to church, did not let you go to the gym, who heavily fined you or even arrested you for your freedom of speech or your freedom of mobility during that time and even afterwards? Oh, some of them are still in office, and many of them Democrat governors, including one, J.B. Pritzker of Illinois. So why are they so afraid of people like Kash Patel? Why are they afraid of Tulsi Gabbard? Why are they afraid of RFK Jr.? All very valid questions, because these are people like President Trump, Republican or Democrat, who want to pull the curtain back and show you, the American people, the truth behind the scenes. And we're very grateful for our sponsors here at Right Side Broadcasting, angelpaste.com. This is an extraordinary group out of Spring, Texas, outside of Houston. Of course, they have the mosquito repellent cream. They also have non-GMO, non-chemical products, so you know that what you're putting on your skin is real, and as it gets absorbed, you don't have to worry about damaging yourself, because this is all natural. I've tried it here on set, and I had some really bad dry hands one day, something I've actually suffered from in the past, and I put that on. It was truly the miracle cream. It was gone within minutes, and I felt glowing and revitalized as a result. But they also have a Manly Man option, a nice black bottle. So guys, trust me on this one. You don't have to worry about gripping that tackle box after putting this on, because we're in the winter months and those hands get dry sometimes. So important to do. Great last minute Valentine's Day gift if you can overnight that. But it's a Christian-based company outside, again, of Houston, Texas in Spring, and they hire veterans as well. So thank you to angelpaste.com for your amazing products. Thank you for sponsoring us here at Right Side Broadcasting Network Live. And President Trump announcing a Presidential Intelligence Advisory Board. Today, the president is pleased to announce a distinguished and trusted group of patriots to serve on the President's Advisory Board. This is the PIAB. These individuals will advise the president on our nation's most important security challenges and ensures that the intelligence community is working to advance the president's America First agenda. The president's PIAB appoints the representatives on a broad range of experience levels and intellect, so that will help restore the integrity to our intelligence committee. And this will also work closely with John Radcliffe over at the CIA, Tulsi Gabbard at the Department of National Intelligence. So the following individuals have been appointed to the President's Intelligence Advisory Board. That is Devin Gerald Nunes, of course, the great CEO of Truth Social, and he's going to chair this committee, the former congressman from California, Devin Nunes. Scott Glabe, also Amaryllis Fox Kennedy, Brad Robert Wenstrup, Wayne Berman, Reince Priebus, the former chief of staff to President Trump, Robert O'Brien as well, a defense expert as well, who served in the first Trump administration. Also Joshua Lobel, Sander R. Gerber, Katie Miller, Jeremy Katz, and Thomas Alice Hicks Jr. So again, chaired by Devin Nunes of Truth Social, the former congressman from California. The PIAB, that's the Presidential Intelligence Advisory Board. So Tulsi Gabbard and also John Radcliffe will have some great help on the side of the day-to-day job of what they have to do as well. So, of course, the focus today, implementing President Trump's Department of Government Efficiency, the workforce optimization initiative. He signed an executive order to restore the accountability to the American public. And this order commences a critical transformation of the federal bureaucracy by eliminating waste, bloat, and the insurability that his administration will empower American families, workers, taxpayers, and our system of government itself. So day by day here, whatever the issue it is, President Trump fighting for the Bill of Rights, the Constitution, taking on all enemies, foreign and domestic, and in turn, the far left really does not know how to message it. We've seen them attempt to lock down free speech assembly. We've seen them attempt to go into the Department of Education unlawfully. We've seen them, after cloture votes, try to speak to block different nominees, and they're not even following their own rules. It's almost as if it's a child having a temper tantrum for the far left on Capitol Hill. And again, this is the deep swamp in the state, and this bloated bureaucracy of globalists, that it's really coming to an end. Their agenda has been voided thanks to President Trump and the MAGA alliance of Republican and Democrats from across the country who want true reform. As we saw in that DOGE subcommittee hearing in the last hour, the fact that we're $36 trillion in debt. And that's because of inefficiency, and Marjorie Taylor Greene and colleagues inviting those experts to speak on all of this and speak to the fact that we need to enact all of President Trump's 20 promises across the board in order to make America great again. Well, we'd like to thank our sponsors here at Right Side Broadcasting, MyPillow.com, the great Mike Lindell. He's coming at you with the mega deal. It's 30% off of his MyCross. And for you ladies out there, there's actually a reversible one of white and black, so to choose with your outfits as well. Of course, the My Towels and the flannel sheets going for $29.98 and $49.98 respectively. Wonderful items, but there's over 2,000 items on the website for nearly 80% off. The master marketer himself, Mr. Mike Lindell, mypillow.com/RSBN. Please visit the website. Matthew Alvarez and I definitely have gotten these amazing products over the years in our respective homes, and he has the My Slippers. I like the My Coffee in the morning, and I like the traditional My Pillow and those Giza Dream Sheets. Wow, you'll have a great night's sleep and rest for your day. mypillow.com/RSBN. Well, don't miss a minute of all the action inside and outside the Beltway. Go to a quick commercial break, and we'll be back with you on the other side. Stick with us here at RSBN Live.
Hey, y'all, it's Silk from the Diamond and Silk Chit Chat live show. Look, don't forget to check me out right here on RSBN Network. Be sure to watch the show on Right Side Broadcasting Network, and I want you to support Right Side Broadcasting Network. Yes, it's imperative that you do so, okay? I look to see y'all soon. Bye-bye.
I'm excited to announce that we're having our first ever mega sale on overstock clearance and brand new products. For example, save over 50% on this season's flannel sheets. Queen size only $59.98. Kings only $69.98. They sell out fast every year, so order now. Save 20% on our brand new My Crosses. They're designed in the likeness of the one I've worn every day for over 20 years. They come in men's and women's, and they're made right here in the USA. Get our 2025 six-piece My Towel sets for only $29.98. Our initial quantities are extremely low, so get them now before they go. And our best-selling standard My Pillows, just $14.98. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use this promo code to take advantage of our first ever mega sale. But wait, remember that $75 free shipping rule? Well, that ship is sailed, because right now, every order ships absolutely free.
Welcome to Right Side Broadcasting Network, your trusted conservative news outlet. At RSBN, we deliver the truth when the mainstream media falls short. Since 2015, we've proudly broadcasted every single one of President Trump's iconic MAGA rallies, bringing you the excitement and energy live before anyone else. By watching RSBN, you get an unfiltered front row view of the action on the ground. We interview the crowds to give a voice to millions of Americans just like you. We show you President Trump's speeches in their entirety, free from interruptions and censorship. We cover the stories that matter to you with the integrity and passion you deserve. Thank you for choosing RSBN as your home for America First news. Together, we stand strong, united, and informed. So join us and be part of the right side of history.
Welcome back to Right Side Broadcasting News Live, as the White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt will host a press briefing at 1 o'clock this afternoon, East Coast time. I'm Robert McNeely, a joy to celebrate this Wednesday with you, halfway home throughout the work week, and that's a shot there of the beautiful White House with that newly fallen snow. If you were watching the excellent coverage last night by my colleague Matthew Alvarez, we welcomed home Mark Fogle, who was suffering in a Russian prison 3.5 years for a low-level crime. He was sentenced to 14 years into a Russian prison because he had some medical marijuana on him. But the team of Steve Witkoff and President Trump releasing him, securing that, and Secretary of State Marco Rubio apparently playing some great behind-the-scenes 4D chess in order to make this happen. So an exciting day to welcome home a great American citizen from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. There's a live look there at the United States Senate as we are awaiting the confirmation vote for Tulsi Gabbard to become the next Secretary of the Department of National Intelligence. And that will be a welcomed reform for, an agency that's been really clouded in the shadows in the modern times. That can include the CIA, that can include the FBI, and here on Right Side Broadcasting Network, you will not find a network more devoted and grateful for our first responders, those in law enforcement, whether it be federal, state, or local. We back the blue here at this wonderful free speech network. At the same time, some of the top of these agencies have been clouded with globalists and a corrupt bureaucracy in the deep state over the last 20 or so years in the post-World War II era of the military-industrial complex. Of course, our great general, the hero of World War II and 34th President of the United States, Dwight D. Eisenhower, warned of this. And we've seen it play out in real time. But thankfully, we have patriots like Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna of Florida and Representative James Comer of Kentucky, who will be starting a committee chaired by Ms. Luna in order to find the truth behind all of the questions that have happened in the last 50 years or so of our governance revolving around the JFK and MLK, RFK assassinations, also 9/11, and other items that have really piqued the curiosity of the American people. And we'll let the truth go where it may, and we will report the facts here at Right Side Broadcasting Network, live for you, the American people. And thank you for supporting the right side of history, because here at the network for the last 10 years, we've brought to you unbridled coverage of President Donald Trump, from the Golden Escalator to the neck of your woods, whether that be in Reading, Pennsylvania, or even New York at Madison Square Garden. How about Coachella, California, and everywhere in between? I think about even Indiana, Pennsylvania, Erie, Pennsylvania, down to Wilmington, North Carolina, and the Raleigh-Durham area, all of the swing states. How about that Wolverine state of Michigan, Traverse City? Wow, that was a cold night, but it was so much fun to wait for President Trump as he did Joe Rogan for 3 hours. His opponent, the former vice president, of course, skipped that. A massive error by her campaign. But President Trump, the people's president, the one who is truly transforming Washington, D.C., and really scaling back the size and scope of the federal government for you, the American people, in order to give this government back to you, because it is yours after all. In his first inaugural, stating that, and in his second inaugural, really not only praising God, acknowledging him for not only a second chance at life, and honoring God, giving him the glory for him to be put in such a time as this, to be the leader and commander-in-chief, 47th president of the United States, but also to serve you, the American people. So thank you for tuning in. 18 minutes after the top of the hour, 11 o'clock on the East Coast. That's a live shot of the U.S. Senate as we await Tulsi Gabbard and that vote for her to become the next Director of National Intelligence. And we'll see what happens here. You know, it's been interesting to watch the fireworks with the far left. Sometimes they have cloture votes, but now we know that they no longer can debate the issue. That is said and done. It now goes to a vote. And sometimes those try to break the rules on the far left side of the antics that they try to pull. But every once in a while, the clerk has to step in and make a difference there. So we will watch that for you as that goes live. So, the steel and aluminum industries here in the United States are applauding President Trump's authorization of Section 232 tariffs. So yesterday, President Trump took decisive action to protect critical American industries by restoring a 25% tariff on steel imports and elevating the tariff to 25% on aluminum imports. In the past, it was around that 10% mark, but President Trump bringing it up to that steel mark of 25%. So this is building on the successful tariffs from his first term, which have been undermined by loopholes and different exemptions. And this was very clear what the Chinese Communist Party attempted to do, especially while Biden was in office. So just some quotes from those industry leaders. They were met with praise very quickly by unions, and lawmakers, and also industry business leaders. The Steel Manufacturers Association President Philip K. Bell stating that the steel industry in America faces serious threats from foreign actors that seek to destroy domestic production. China and other countries routinely violate trade laws and dump heavily subsidized steel products to the United States at the expense of American workers. By imposing a 25% tariff on steel imports, President Trump is leaving the playing field for American manufacturers and workers and helping America defeat direct threats to our jobs. The United Steelworkers President, David McCall, stating that our union welcomes President Trump's efforts to contain the global overcapacity that has for too long enabled bad actors like China to flood the global market with its unfairly traded products, resulting in surging imports into the United States, especially from Mexico. The Aluminum Association President Charles Johnson says that we appreciate President Trump's continued focus on strong trade actions to support the aluminum industry in the United States, and that during his first term, he focused heavily on this. Today, there's enough smelting capacity in the United States to supply the growing aluminum industry with the input materials it needs. So an exciting, robust reaction from the industry. Let's go live to a full screen of the United States Senate now as they prepare to vote for Tulsi Gabbard.
Mr. Van Hollen, Mr. Warner, Mr. Warnock, Ms. Warren, Mr. Welch, Mr. Whitehouse, Mr. Wicker, Mr. Wyden, Mr. Young, Senators voting in the affirmative: Banks, Barrasso, Blackburn, Britt, Budd, Cassidy, Cotton, Crapo, Curtis, Daines, Grassley, Johnson, Justice, Langford, Moran, Mullen, Risch, Rounds, Schmidt, Scott of South Carolina, Sheehy, Tillis, Tuberville. Mr. Hoeven, aye. Senators voting in the negative: Also Brooks, Coons, Hassan, Heinrich, Kim, Klobuchar, Lujan, Murray, Peters, Schumer, Shaheen, Van Hollen, Wyden. Mr. McCormick, aye. Mr. Ricketts, aye. Mrs. Hyde-Smith, aye. Mrs. Fisher, aye. Mr. Schiff, no. Mr. Bozeman, aye. Mr. Schatz, no. Mr. Marshall, aye. Mr. Gallego, no. Mr. Thune. Mr. Thune, aye. Ms. Duckworth, no. Ms. Ernst, aye. Ms. Collins, aye.
And what you're looking at there is a live look at the United States Senate. They are currently voting on Tulsi Gabbard to become the next DNI secretary. That's the Department of National Intelligence. So we'll continue to listen in, watch this vote in real time, and look to see the final vote tallies. As we've been watching, it seems as if it will be on a partisan line, Republicans supporting Tulsi Gabbard. It seems as if the Democrats, at least thus far, not in support of her, but this is what you're watching here, a live vote on Tulsi Gabbard's nomination to become the director of the Department of National Intelligence.
Mr. Ossoff, no. Mr. Welch, no. Ms. Baldwin, no. Ms. Cantwell, no. Mr. Kelly, no. Mr. Graham, aye. Mrs. Moody, aye. Mr. Warner, no. Ms. Lummis, aye. Ms. Blunt Rochester, no. Mr. Husted, aye. Ms. Slotkin, no. Mrs. Capito, aye. Mr. Murphy, no. Mr. Blumenthal, no. Mr. Scott of Florida, aye. Mr. Sullivan, aye. Mr. Hickenlooper, no. Mr. Sanders, no. Mr. Cornyn, aye. Mr. King, no. Mr. Reed, no. Mr. Markey, no. Ms. Warren, no. Mr. Kramer, aye. Mr. Paul, aye. Mr. Fetterman, no. Mr. Wicker, aye. Mr. McConnell, no. Mr. Moreno, aye. Mrs. Gillibrand, no. Mr. Whitehouse, no. Mr. Booker, no. Mr. Kane, no. Miss Rosen, no. Mr. Durbin, no. Mr. Warnock, no. Ms. Smith, no. Mr. Kennedy, aye. Mr. Haggerty, aye. Mr. Lee, aye. Mr. Cruz, aye. Mr. Padilla, no. Mr. Young, aye. Ms. Murkowski, aye. Mr. Bennett, no. Mr. Hawley, aye.
And what you're watching live now, the United States Senate votes on the confirmation of Tulsi Gabbard, and they should be reading out those votes for you with the presiding officer, Senator Sheehy of Montana. We'll go back to the Senate live right now.
Mr. President, I move to waive the mandatory quorum with respect to the Kennedy nomination.
Is there objection? Without objection. The clerk will report the motion to invoke cloture.
Cloture motion. We, the undersigned senators, in accordance with the provisions of Rule 22 of the Standing Rules of the Senate, do hereby move to bring to a close debate on the nomination of Robert F. Kennedy, Jr. of California to be Secretary of Health and Human Services, signed by 17 senators.
By unanimous consent, the mandatory quorum call has been waived. A quorum is present. The question. What you want to do? The question is it the sense of the Senate that debate on the nomination of Robert F. Kennedy, Jr. of California to be Secretary of Health and Human Services shall be brought to a close? The yeas and nays are mandatory under the rule. The clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Also-Brooks, Ms. Baldwin, Mr. Banks, Mr. Barrasso. Aye.
Mr. Bennett. Mrs. Blackburn. Thank you. Mr. Blumenthal, Ms. Blunt Rochester. Mr. Booker, Mr. Bozeman, Mrs. Britt, Mr. Budd, Ms. Cantwell, Mrs. Capito, Mr. Cassidy, Ms. Collins, Mr. Coons, Mr. Cornyn, thank you, Ms. Cortez Masto, Mr. Cotton, Mr. Kramer, Mr. Crapo, Mr. Cruz, Mr. Curtis, Mr. Daines, Ms. Duckworth, Mr. Durbin, Ms. Ernst, Mr. Fetterman, Mrs. Fisher, Mr. Gallego, Mrs. Gillibrand, Mr. Graham, Mr. Grassley, Mr. Haggerty, Ms. Hassan, Mr. Hawley, Mr. Heinrich, Mr. Hickenlooper, Mr. Ono, Mr. Hoven, Mr. Husted, Mrs. Hyde-Smith. I did not, thank you. Mr. Johnson, Mr. Justice, Mr. Kane.
No, yes.
Mr. Kelly, Mr. Kennedy, Mr. Kim, Mr. King, Ms. Klobuchar, Mr. Langford. Thanks. Mr. Lee, Mr. Lujan, Ms. Lummis, Mr. Markey, Mr. Marshall, Mr. McConnell, Mr. McCormick, Mr. Merkley, Mrs. Moody, Mr. Moran, Mr. Moreno, Mr. Mullen, Ms. Murkowski, Mr. Murphy, Mrs. Murray, Mr. Ossoff, Mr. Padilla, Mr. Paul, Mr. Peters, Mr. Reed, Mr. Ricketts, Mr. Risch, Ms. Rosen, Mr. Rounds, Mr. Sanders, Mr. Schatz, Mr. Schiff, Mr. Schmidt, Mr. Schumer, Mr. Scott of Florida, Mr. Scott of South Carolina, Mrs. Shaheen, Mr. Sheehy, Ms. Slotkin, Ms. Smith, Mr. Sullivan, Mr. Thune, Mr. Tillis, Mr. Tuberville, Mr. Van Hollen, Mr. Warner, Mr. Warnock, Ms. Warren, Mr. Welch, Mr. Whitehouse, Mr. Wicker, Mr. Wyden, Mr. Young, Senators voting in the affirmative: Banks, Barrasso, Capito, Kramer, Curtis, Fisher, Haggerty, Hawley, Husted, Justice, Kennedy, Lee, McConnell, McCormick, Moran, Moreno, Mullen, Murkowski, Paul, Ricketts, Scott of Florida, Sheehy, Thune, Tillis, and Tuberville. Ms. Collins, aye. Senators voting in the negative:
Thank you.
Also Brooks, Bennett, Blunt Rochester, Booker, Coons, Durbin, Fetterman, Gallego, Hassan, Heinrich, Kane, Kim, Lujan, Reed, Rosen, Schatz, Shaheen, Slotkin, and Smith. Mr. Cornyn, aye. Mr. Cruz, aye.
If you're just joining us, welcome to RSBN Live at nearly noon o'clock on the East Coast, 9 o'clock for you on the West Coast of our amazing country. You're seeing live there the United States Senate as they conclude a cloture vote on RFK Jr.'s nomination to be the next Health and Human Services Secretary. So what does that mean? A cloture vote simply brings the debate to a closure and then moves the order for a final vote, which is anticipated for tomorrow. Just prior to this cloture vote, we had the final vote and confirmation of Tulsi Gabbard to become the next director of the Department of National Intelligence, and that was by a vote of 52 to 48 senators. So a narrow but winning victory. So Tulsi Gabbard will be sworn in, and she's officially going to take on that role of national intelligence. But we'll go back live to the United States Senate on Capitol Hill, in our nation's capital, of course, Washington, D.C., for the cloture vote on RFK's nomination for Health and Human Services Secretary.
Mr. Bozeman, aye. Ms. Cortez Masto, no. Mr. Peters, no. Ms. Ernst, aye. Mr. Johnson, aye. Mr. Murphy, no. Mr. Wyden, no. Mr. Cotton, aye. Mr. Crapo, aye. Mr. Daines, aye. Mr. King, no. Mr. Hoven, aye. Mrs. Hyde-Smith, aye. Mrs. Blackburn, aye. Ms. Warren, no. Mrs. Britt, aye. Mr. Welch, no. Mr. Rounds, aye. Mr. Hickenlooper, no. Mr. Kelly, no. Mrs. Moody, aye. Mr. Langford, aye. Mr. Wicker, aye. Mr. Cassidy, aye. Mr. Warner, no. Mr. Sanders, no. Mr. Schiff, no. Mr. Whitehouse, no. Mr. Marshall, aye. Ms. Baldwin, no. Mr. Warnock, no. Thank you. Mr. Schumer, no. Mrs. Murray, no. Mr. Merkley, no. Mr. Graham, aye. Mr. Murky, no. Mr. Blumenthal, no. Mr. Grassley, aye. Mr. Scott of South Carolina, aye. Mr. Ossoff, no. Mr. Padilla, no. Ms. Klobuchar, no. Mrs. Gillibrand, no. Mr. Risch, aye. Mr. Schmidt, aye. Mr. Van Hollen, no. Mr. Budd, aye. Mr. Sullivan, aye. Ms. Lummis, aye. Mr. Young, aye. Ms. Hirono, no.
On this vote, the yeas are 53, the nays are 47. The motion is agreed to. The clerk will report the nomination.
Department of Health and Human Services, Robert F. Kennedy, Jr. of California to be Secretary.
Mr. President.
Senator from Oregon, sorry.
Mr. President, as we begin this discussion that is so important to America, I thought I would just mention the conversation I had recently with a couple of young medical students who came up to me and said, you know, we know you're interested in health care and have been involved in this, and I'm so appreciative of Senator Murray, who's going to pick up on the health care issue, an area where she has very substantial experience and expertise. And I thought these medical students summed up this debate because they said, the way we see this Kennedy nomination, it's not just a vote for next week or even next year. This is a vote with enormous impact for decades because Mr. Kennedy, according to these young students, these young medical students, has a long record of essentially being anti-science. And what we're going to do in our discussion of his nomination is go into that and other issues. And suffice it to say, during his confirmation hearings, and they've been in multiple committees.
And we were live from the United States Senate. I'm Robert McNeely here with Matthew Alvarez, Right Side Broadcasting Live. We're in Auburn, Alabama, where there is no snow. Of course, you can see that nice side split screen of our White House that had that nice light dusting yesterday. And what a beautiful moment. If you'd like to reflect, Matthew, just an incredible situation. Mark Fogle coming back to the United States.
Yeah, for those of you that watched last night, live coverage right here on RSBN Live, you know, it was an opportunity to just stop with the commentary and just let it breathe, just like we just saw there in the chamber. And to see Mark Fogle say things like, I'm just so happy to be back in America, and to give President Trump the praise that's due for what he has done. and also the others there, Marco Rubio and Mr. Witkoff as well. So it was a great moment. If you missed it at all, of course, just check it out maybe after this broadcast. Of course, we've got the great press briefing coming up here soon.
Yes, looking forward to that. And Karoline Leavitt's been knocking it out of the park with her team as well. Some wonderful press officials and professionals sending out up-to-the-minute comms on all the successes of President Trump. If you've been with us for roughly the last hour, we had the final vote for Tulsi Gabbard to become the Director of National Intelligence by a vote of 52 to 48. She is now confirmed, and we are awaiting her swearing-in ceremony, which will most likely be with the Vice President of the United States, who is en route back to the United States from his successful AI Action Summit in Paris, France. He had met with Prime Minister Emmanuel Macron of the French state and also Prime Minister Modi of India. So that seemed to be very productive, and we'll be interested to see what the Vice President has to further say on all of those issues. And you were just watching as well the cloture vote of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. for HHS Secretary. So that means it will now go to a final vote tomorrow. There still seems to be floor debate, but they are now moving forward with that, and that will be a massive celebration as well.
Yeah, a lot of great news happening today on Right Side Broadcasting Network. Of course, I know you're here as well for the press briefing, which will start in about 25 minutes or so. Obviously, we'll bring that from the start to the finish and in its entirety. And we thank, again, MyPillow.com for being an awesome sponsor at the network. I was watching some of the live reporting earlier. He was talking about the slippers that I have. Well, I have a lot of products from MyPillow as well. So it's pretty cool to hear the shout out from Robert McNeely on RSBN.
Yes, and likewise, and thank you, Matthew, for the shout outs last night with that remarkable coverage. And that's what you're going to see here at Right Side Broadcasting, wall-to-wall coverage of unbridled access inside and outside the Beltway. And speaking of outside the Beltway and real America, Mr. Mike Lindell with the mega sale, the My Towels, My Cross, and flannel sheets all going for a great deal right now. Save 30% on that My Cross, a great gift for Valentine's Day if you need a last-minute gesture for your loved one. $28.98 for a six-pack towel set. The flannel sheets, of course, $44.98, but over 2,000 different items that are close to or over 80% off. I mean, this is a remarkable website, a remarkable man, a man of God, a man of the Constitution, and he's right here in the great state of Minnesota. So feel free to support Mr. Mike Lindell at mypillow.com/RSBN. Thank you for your support, sir, as we are on the right side of history.
Amen to that. 12:35 Eastern as we get ready to go to the White House once again. We've been seeing a lot of different rooms at the White House. I was talking about that last night, the diplomatic receiving room there and so many other rooms. It's a beautiful building, and it's great to see President Trump using it for so many good things when it comes to our country. And, today's news about Tulsi and RFK, always good to see that. President Trump on Truth Social just a little bit ago saying he just had a lengthy and highly productive phone call with President Vladimir Putin of Russia. He said they discussed Ukraine, the Middle East, energy, artificial intelligence, the power of the dollar, and various other subjects. So it was a good contextual call there. And if you'd like to read that, of course, it's on Truth Social for President Trump. It's a lengthy post, one of his longest posts that I've seen that he's written. But it's great to see that the steps are going in the right direction on the heels of the Mark Fogle situation. That we have the Treasury Secretary in Ukraine, and then we've got the situation with President Trump talking to Putin. This might be the beginning of the end of that terrible war.
Oh yes, it's glad to see that focus because there's so many Russians and Ukrainian, even Polish and Belarusian citizens of the United States or that have dual citizenship, and this region has really been affected by really a war-torn situation that is awful, should have never happened, and would have never happened if President Trump was initially in office. And President Trump spoke on that a little bit last night, even though the focus was on Mark Fogle, of course, coming back home as a political prisoner, now free again in the United States after 3.5 years. 1.5 million people, mostly military, have perished because of this battle. It's become a stalemate. And as you mentioned, Matthew, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent going to the Ukraine to meet with President Zelensky, and that will be, again, hopefully the beginning of the end, and hopefully by the end of February here, might have some form of a ceasefire deal.
Exactly. It would be great to see that. And speaking of that, when we look at Hamas and Israel, President Trump saying by noon on Saturday, if there's not a huge release of hostages, all bets are off. The deal is off, and he said in the past, all hell to pay. So we'll see what developments happen there. I'm sure he'll be in discussion. He's in discussion with the Prime Minister of Israel pretty much every day, especially when it comes to this hostage situation. Also, speaking of letting people free, well, President Trump yesterday, if you caught it, he said someone else will be set free today.
Yes.
He said that yesterday. So is that someone else, another American that was in Russia? So we'll see. We'll follow those developments as we get it. And maybe the White House press secretary might make that announcement. Who knows?
Yes, very possible. We've seen in the last couple of days, including the bilateral meeting between His Majesty King Abdullah of Jordan and President Trump yesterday, that they would have 2,000 medically sick children going to Jordan as refugees. And President Trump was actually surprised and very happy with that announcement. So stay tuned, and that's what we do here at Right Side Broadcasting. We bring you the entirety of everything because you never know when there might be breaking news in a press conference or in a bilateral meeting with world leaders. It's really on the fly, and you get it here firsthand, real time at Right Side.
Exactly. It's always good to have it in that real time on RSBN Live as we await the press conference there in the briefing room. And of course, it's great to see other members of the media that are more based and conservative than the lamestream leftists that, usually ask those false narrative questions. But even yesterday, it was interesting. It's like when Mark Fogle walked into that room at the White House with the president, the first question out of the mouth of one of the reporters was, well, did you speak directly with Vladimir Putin? It's like, can you just understand the moment for a second? Are you not a citizen of this country? Like, somebody just got set free. He was going to have 14 years in jail for something that would barely be maybe even a misdemeanor here.
Right.
Show that respect or that humanity. And I think that's what's been missing in media.
Oh, no question about that. It's taking in the moment, and sometimes you don't get access to the president, but this man makes himself so accessible day after day. I mean, Karoline Leavitt mentioned that in her first White House press briefing a couple of weeks ago, that the best spokesperson ultimately for the White House is President Trump. You have an open door, and we see this on a regular basis. And again, it's great to be back in a time where he's on the phone doing interviews, he's on camera doing interviews. He's so accessible. He was at the Super Bowl. He's likely now going to the Daytona 500, the great American race in Florida on Sunday. So, I mean, this president, you never have to question where his whereabouts are. He's always out there with the people and with the media.
Before we get to our next great sponsor here at the network, we're seeing some breaking news from Fox that a federal judge has determined that President Trump indeed possesses the constitutional power to freeze or restrict specific federal funds. Consequently, the Trump administration could withhold funding without needing prior approval from the district court. So that is another win for President Trump and exactly what he's doing in this country, making it great again. So let's go to BrightCore, mybrightcore.com. Of course, a great sponsor here. Kimchi One, an awesome product as well. So if you go to mybrightcore.com/RSBN, if you buy two, you get one free.
Yes, 50% off. And give them a call today, 888-722-0936, or visit mybrightcore.com/RSBN. All health starts in the gut, and I trust them. They're made in the USA and been using it myself, so I highly recommend it to get your day started right with good probiotics and healthy bacteria. It goes all the way up to your head, so it will affect your whole day in a positive manner. So get on out there and get some BrightCore, made in the USA, their premier product, Kimchi One.
It's always good, and so is Kim Bright, the owner. She's such a great person, loves MAGA, loves Maha, loves our country, so always good to have that as well when you sell a great product. All right, so we see the White House there on the right side of your screen. I'm reading more on this statement from President Trump. It looks like there's going to be a peace situation between Ukraine and Russia as I'm reading this post from President Trump from just within the hour. So obviously big news there.
Right.
But a lot of big news around this country too with all of the executive orders happening.
Oh, yeah,
you know
so
how
much.
we look at some of the video or the pictures from the southern border and we're seeing various people down there, the military and local authorities just doing a great job. And I was watching video again, and even in Fort Drum, New York, they were getting all the equipment ready to put onto the larger C-130s and send them down to the southern border. So this is an actual national movement that's happening within our military right now.
Oh, it's really all hands on deck, the Marines, the Army Corps of Engineers, and thank you to Border Patrol and ICE as well. I mean, this has been a tireless operation in the last 23 days, and even Canada and Mexico responding positively because President Trump has temporarily suspended those tariffs on each nation in order to fulfill border security needs, and even going after the foreign terrorist cartels that are even operating in Canada. So great to see people like the Mexican president and the Prime Minister of Canada, who are philosophically diametrically opposed to President Trump, falling to his will and his art of the deal. And that's the way it should be.
Exactly. And speaking art of the deal maker, the negotiator, bringing Mark Fogle back from Russia. I mean, he knows how to do the job. He makes a phone call and it gets done. And that's pretty awesome to see. Also, let's talk about Doge a little bit. We saw Elon Musk there yesterday, of course, at the White House in the Oval Office. MTG, during this Doge subcommittee hearing that most of you saw on the other live stream, the bureaucrats who have run Washington for decades are beyond the point of forgiveness. That, according to MTG there. I mean, we're seeing at every level, and now Doge is going to look at other departments around our country. Right. And this is really just cleaning up the swampiness of our nation.
Right, and so exciting to see that, because we're $36 trillion in debt, as the chairwoman mentioned this morning, and having a panel of experts there saying that the money is really not going to the American people, and we need entitlement reform. This was something highlighted last night in the evening press office, or actually in the Oval Office, with President Trump, Elon Musk, and of course, little ex-Musk, who was just adorable as always, and seems to have a great time with his dad and the president. So just reminded me of John F. Kennedy and, of course, John Jr. at that same desk, the Resolute desk.
That's what's cool about President Trump. It doesn't have to be so presidential all the time, because you could have families there and people there, because he's a common sense leader and also is presidential at the same time. He's got it going on. We know that. So the DHS Secretary, Kristi Noem, just posted on Truth Social, literally within the minute, that ICE needs a culture of accountability that it has been starved of for the past 4 years. President Trump and the American people rightfully demand results, and our ICE leadership must ensure the agency delivers. Accountability is back. That according to Kristi Noem. So just back to that point of seeing our country getting cleaned up, not only in that financial sector, but in the law and order and safety sector as well.
Right, and that's why President Trump was so aggressive going back a decade ago to closing the loopholes in regards to immigration, especially illegal immigration, because if people aren't safe, they're not able to make money. It goes hand in hand to a strong economic status as a nation, and something that his predecessors living did not understand. We saw problems with this during Bill Clinton and George W. Bush, of course with Barack Obama and Joe Biden. Ultimately, really 4 failed commanders-in-chief, and President Trump, on now his second occasion, is cleaning up their mess.
Yeah, exactly. And even in the press situation, loving the First Amendment, as does this White House and the entire Constitution, the Second Amendment and on, of course, cleaning up even that room there when it comes to the amount of people that have spewed lies. And it was the same thing that happened at the Pentagon. Didn't the Secretary of Defense, Hegseth, remove them from allowing access to press briefings. And there's some big so-called big names there.
Right, cutting the pork, as they used to call it several years ago, but it's turned out to be more than just bacon fat. It's turned into an extremely bloated animal in and of itself, and a nightmare for our public doings. But it's great to see as well, literally and figuratively speaking, the cutting of that pork, because you had Pete Hegseth actually doing some PT with the troops in Brussels, Belgium, and taking the time to shake hands of each and every one of our service members. We've hit a recruitment high going back to December, a 15-year high, I believe. Thank you to Donald Trump and Secretary Hegseth for leading the way. It's people want to sign up because there's accountability and meritocracy now.
Exactly. Patriotism is back. And also, what is also back is Republican Red Winery, republicanred.com. We've got a couple bottles here for you, as you guys have seen. This is the red blend, 45-47, right here on your screen. Wine for the right side. Robert, you know what? You always talk about the sparkling wine. Why don't we switch it up?
Okay, absolutely. We'll trade it on up here.
All right. So
It
what's on the
is.
back there then?
The back here is also a toast. They both, what I really like about these bottles, they both have toasts on them, but this is talking about many shades of red, and whether or not you were thrilled about the red wave, I'm sure most of you were, we proudly raise a red wine glass to Republicans together, one glass at a time. Join us for giving a voice to the silent majority, of course, with the 45-47 red blend.
Exactly, and 45-47, the golden age of America, sparkling wine. I still don't know how Robert holds these bottles again. You said they have the what?
Oh yeah, they have the little, well, it's a little curvature or, crevice, if you will, that is held there, and then you can just kind of dance around with it. There's a couple of different ways.
Not
and
going
then
to
you
do
can
that at
pour it
all.
To the side.
I'm going to hold with two hands like this.
While you're singing and impress your guests with your support for President Trump. But a generational family-owned and operated winery from the Central Coast of California. It's really quite delicious, and a portion of the proceeds go to conservative and Republican causes. So it makes a lot of sense if you celebrate a Wine Wednesday, or you have time even to celebrate with some wine before the Great American Race on Sunday. So why not get some just in time with code RSBN?
And Valentine's Day Friday night, not bad.
Oh yes, there's Valentine's Day.
Come on now.
A weekend of love. Well, I wouldn't know necessarily, but no, I'm kidding.
Well, not yet. You're finding the right one soon. All right, so Washington, D.C. live there, of course, as we're thankful to Republican Red Winery for being a great sponsor here at the network. We see that the press secretary, Karoline Leavitt, this will be the 4th press briefing. I don't know how many we're going to keep count, but you know what? At the end of the day, it's still great to see her up there and really deliver the truth to the American people.
Well, and for anyone who doubted her, I don't think they realize quite how professional, prepared, and charismatic she is. And one of her predecessors actually mentioned that, saying, I don't think this press corps is quite ready for the professionalism, the prowess, the sheer natural ability of Karoline Leavitt. So a lot of people doubted her because, oh, she's 27. Oh, big deal. Gen Z is Gen free, and she has done an outstanding job at the White House. And actually, she's done so well that it's made our job easier as RSBN hosts to get the truth out there to you, because we get the White House emails, we get the press briefings, we get the MAGA Minute that we're subscribed to, so we get to see all of the facts in real time, and that helps us bring all this great truth to you.
And speaking of MAGA, I don't believe the MAGA.com is connected to President Trump, but there is some great gear that you showed a number of us on our internal communications here. So what was on there? There was Gulf of America hats and shirts and all kinds of stuff, right?
Yes, there was so much going on with the amount of companies that President Trump has actually helped start or inspire has been remarkable. But they had a nice Trump hat for St. Patrick's Day as well that just had the cursive Trump on the front. And of course, yes, MAGA.com, not official with the campaign of Donald J. Trump or even the White House, but definitely MAGA fans, and some great gear for you to get if you're looking to celebrate with the aptly named, newly named Gulf of America.
Sounds like a good sponsor maybe in the future here at Right Side.
Perhaps. Let's get on the phone, MAGA.com. If you're happening to tune in, we'd be very happy and appreciative to have your support here at Right Side Broadcasting.
Also working in sales right here on the network, on the fly, 12:51, about 9 minutes out from yet another great press briefing to be had. A lot of questions to be asked, and I'm sure that Karoline's going to receive questions about, okay, specifics on the phone call with President Putin. But the thing is she can just say, well, go ahead and look at President Trump's Truth Social post, because it in length describes what that call was like. So, and then again, this on the heels of the Secretary of the Treasury Department, Scott Bessent, out in Ukraine to meet with Vladimir Zelensky. So a lot of things are getting done, both domestically and in foreign policy. And many of us, we've been saying the whole quote of our heads are spinning. Well, it's true, because there's really a lot going on.
Yes, so much good happening in the last 23 days. Just some highlights. The border is now 87% closed down. This past week, we saw 331 attempts at crossing the border. Those all failed because it's being monitored, and ideally they want to get that to zero. You know, Tom Homan meeting at the White House with President Trump, the border czar, who has been on the ground, as has Kristi Noem, on ICE raids and getting the worst of the worst out of this country, most over to Guantanamo Bay or to their country of origin. And these are serial rapists, murderers, people who are involved in child trafficking as well. They are gonzo, as President Trump has said. And I'm glad that, President Trump on certain occasions, but border czar Tom Homan also mentioning that he's a practicing Catholic. He was born into the faith. And he took issue with Pope Francis. I'm glad he did, because the Pope is also a political figure, criticizing the United States for these ICE raids. And he reminded him that you have a nice, beautiful wall around the Vatican. I've been there on a couple of occasions. And so the hypocrisy in and of itself, albeit a holy man, does have a political presence. And for the Vatican to criticize the United States through Pope Francis's voice is incredibly irresponsible. And it's sad. I myself am a practicing Catholic. We're doing the moral thing by removing evil people from this country who broke the law.
Exactly. It reminds me of that so-called bishop, according to President Trump, calling her a so-called bishop back at the Washington National Cathedral the day after the inauguration, and she just was leftist talking points, woke talking points, and definitely wasn't received well by any of we the people, especially the majority of the country.
Right.
I do want to put you on the spot slightly here a little bit. As a practicing Catholic, what is that like to see the Pope say something politically, but then religiously it's a little bit different? You know what I mean?
It really comes as no surprise because of the track record. I also do believe, well, if you look back at the last two popes of Benedict and John Paul II, what was really brilliant about those men, great scholars. Not that Francis isn't smart by any means. He speaks 4 languages. That's more than I do. But if you look at the other two men, they spoke 8+ languages. So when you had these kind of gotcha questions, even with their press pool on Alitalia or whatever the Pope was traveling, a lot of times John Paul II, Benedict could actually respond in the native tongue of who was asking the question. People would be shocked. And it'd be like, no, I didn't say that. I said this. That's a failure somewhat of Francis, as English is very much a second or even third language for him. It's really not on the roster there. And I think a lot of news medias do take advantage of that to spin that into a conservative or liberal direction. At the same time, he has put out on many occasions criticizing the president over these moves and making it almost seem like it's inhumane, the operations of ICE and Border Patrol, when it's not. So I believe it's very irresponsible and sad that he would go down a political route and actually sound very hypocritical in the process, because again, if you've been to the Vatican, highly recommend it, whether or not you're a practicing Catholic. It's beautiful for Western civilization to go St. Peter's Basilica and see the majesty of God's church, but at the same time, there's a wall around it, and that was a medieval wall, but it's kind of just like if you have a wall around your house and then you're telling people not to lock their doors, you're going to get called out on it.
Yeah, exactly. So interesting to hear that. It is good, though, when you have someone of faith speaking politically conservative, common sense, constitutional. Like,
right.
This isn't a discussion about if in the pulpit somebody should be talking about conservative values plus faith. This is more just disagreeing with something that the Pope said.
Right, exactly. It's not a dogma, as you call it, within the church of this can't change. And even the head of the church, the Pope, is not infallible in the sense of changing dogmas. So of what is just inherent natural order and truth, that actually can't be changed even though he's at the top. So a little bit of Catholic theology for you. You know, the Vice President, J.D. Vance, as a Catholic as well, dove into with the Orvis Notum, I believe is how it's said, but it talked about St. Augustine and that order of life of who you're to love first. And he went through that, and people are kind of mocking him for it from all different directions. And it makes a lot of sense about you're responsible first to your vocational status in life. He's married with children, so he's to love his wife and family first. And then, of course, to his job, his obligation to serve the people of the United States as vice president. Then it builds out from there. And we are the most charitable, hospitable people in the entire world. So, I mean, you can't really criticize that with the American people, because who comes to the call when there's a need? It's always us. So to really be on the opposite side of that is rather laughable. And I thought it was nice that the vice president outlined that recently.
It's always good to have context, right? So that's what we're getting here as it's 12:57. Looking forward to the White House press briefing, seeing reports from Breaking 911 that 3 detainees have been released from Belarus. 1 is a U.S. citizen. 2 are non-Americans. One of those 2 is a Radio Liberty journalist. So we're seeing reports that may be referring to what President Trump was saying about another person being released, an American being released today. He said that yesterday when Mark Fogle was there at the White House. Colonial Metals Group, another sponsor here at the network, not just another sponsor, a great sponsor, because at the end of the day, we interviewed Paul Stone, who is on point as well when it comes to the economy and knowing that gold and silver are always a great backup plan, especially for those in the retirement community, or if you have that little extra cash in the savings to diversify into gold and silver. You guys have heard it before, but the reviews from these guys are great.
Oh yeah, they're outstanding. So scan that QR code, shield your savings now. It actually details in the book, which is free to you, no obligation, but also you can review your options. 1971 to 2024, a 7,000% increase in the value of gold. This is time tested throughout the centuries. You always have it as a great backup or a great offense to the hedge against inflation. So whether it's properties or assets, of course, 401ks and IRAs, you might want to think about converting into this or keeping this in addition to everything that is offered here with gold, silver, precious metals. And Paul lays it out very well as an economist and a thought leader on these issues. But scan that QR code now. Get this free guide with Colonial Metals Group.
You can also go to freegoldguide.com/RSBN. So freegoldguide.com/RSBN. All right, it's about the top of the hour here, getting ready to go to Washington. We'll see what kind of topics are brought up today. I mean, I believe the press will ask about Doge and Elon Musk. And at the end of the day, Elon just yesterday showing a lot of transparency about what they're doing. They're just simply saying, well, we're looking at these numbers, and why did this check go to this person? It doesn't even say who it really went to. Like, it's some very common sense stuff.
Mm-hmm. It really is. It's just, at the end of the day, it's a bloated bureaucracy that has enriched itself, and it's not Republican or Democrat in the sense of, who chooses to go what party from outside the Beltway. It's all about these people who have been put up into a bundle, and if you shake it together, you can't tell the difference between them. It's a deep state that has been dismantled. And then there's also a globalist way of thinking and a nationalist way of thinking. And President Trump has been consistent since the 1980s, whether it was going on the Oprah show or even others like Phil Donahue. I watched a clip last night from him in the 80s, and he was talking about Japan, how they manipulated their currency. Of course, President Reagan slapped a 100% tariff on Japan in his time towards the end of office in 1987 as a result of them trying to take advantage of global markets. And fast forward to now, we have a $1 trillion investment coming from the Japanese government. President Trump meeting just last week with the Prime Minister Ishiba, who seemed to have a wonderful time at the White House.
Yeah, it's been quite the coverage here, seeing various world leaders meet President Trump and to discuss global politics and domestic policy as well. All right, it's 1 o'clock. I was just thinking, there at the White House press briefing room, you know how they have the White House press dinner each year?
Right.
Will there be a table for conservative media and new media at that table? Will they get roasted? Of course they would. But at the end of the day, we're on the side of the truth. Let's just be real, right? But will President Trump attend? Will White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt attend? Robert and I know many of you, love comedy. It is fun. I like to hear a roast here and there too. And just, who doesn't like to laugh, right? But will that happen? Who knows? Not the biggest story in the world, but we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see how that all goes. And we caught a glimpse of a friend of ours, I'm sure you're familiar with him at the network, Harrison Fields, Deputy White House Press Secretary and White House spokesman in his own regard. So he had a nice publication I saw he posted on Instagram and had a quote in the New York Times as well. So great to see talking about how President Trump's policies are helping the economy and to fight back Biden inflation. And they've only been in office for 23 days. So that White House Correspondents' Dinner, they might need 2 or 3 more rooms. I mean, we've had 10,000 applications come in since the last press briefing by Karoline Leavitt. She announced that the new media can come in if you apply at whitehouse.gov/new media. 10,000 applications. Great messages getting out to the American people. The most transparent administration in modern history.
Exactly. So obviously each person in there either is on the right side of history or not on the right side. They're on the left. And there's really no down the middle, it seems, anymore. It's really, are you on the side of common sense or are you on the side of a woke ideology? If you really want to just generalize it, which,
right.
I mean, we're just calling it how it is, right? I mean, I think what people want is that kind of transparency here at the network as well.
Yes, I mean, and that's why we'll stay on them too. It doesn't matter what letter is next to their name. We're here for you, the American people. It's we the people versus the deep state. I mean, this is why the founders envisioned a national city where you can come and dialogue on these things. And we now know the modern Democrats want this to become another state so that they could put 2 new United States senators in place in a city of roughly, give or take, 750,000 people plus. And it has roughly, I believe, parameters of a 10-mile radius or so. So, I mean, you want to talk about really a small slice of American life that is completely out of touch with the rest of the American people. That's the deep state of D.C., the swamp.
Yeah.
We don't want that to be a state.
Right, it's getting dismantled. The swamp's getting slowly, drained. But we're seeing, of course, that happen with DOGE, with President Trump and the cabinet picks that he has. And I was talking to Robert before I jumped on with him here at the desk. And what's the deal with Kash Patel? We know we want him as a director of the FBI. Why are they slow rolling that now a lot? They're kind of just sliding that down a little bit. No, we don't want him yet. Let's not even talk about it. Like, if there's something to hide, I can see that happening. Mm-hmm. But if there's nothing to hide, he should be the guy that's already got the position.
Oh, exactly. And, each day brings hope. We now have Tulsi Gabbard, who was voted on this morning, a 52-48 vote for her to become the next director of national intelligence. And so each day as this goes on, with each new cabinet member coming in, you hope to see that it will get to Kash sooner rather than later. But I think they're afraid of him because he knows where the skeletons are in the closets, in the deepest, darkest rooms in Washington, D.C. And that FBI needs major reforms. And we're super pro-police here at RSBN. I mean, we love our first responders, federal, state, local, all of the above. I often think about it. Every once in a while you see an ambulance go by or a fire truck and you think, wow, I mean, jobs matter. Our job is such a wonderful job. You think about it, it's the only one named in the Constitution for a free and fair press. At the same time, when you really look back and you think about people that are willing to go into a burning building, that are willing to take a bullet for someone else, I mean, there's some brave folks out there, and they do these jobs because they love it. So I'm talking about 95% of the FBI, the intelligence services included, are good people who devote themselves to this country. It's that top that seems to be rotten right now that Kash Patel will cleanse.
Exactly, and that's the one I'm referring to, that corrupted part. Just like if there's a computer virus, you have to get some kind of program, software to get rid of the virus. So speaking of that, a woke mind virus. Anyway, so it's 1:05 as we see the live picture there at the White House. And Robert and I and others have seen various correspondents on the campaign trail. And sometimes we'd be right next to various left-leaning outlets.
Right.
And I've heard, just from earshot, just the garbage being spewed on a national level. And that's why the ratings are going down, because they're not speaking the truth and the context of what is being said, and it's not based in common sense of the Constitution. So you don't have to sound so eloquent all the time either when you're doing a report, because sometimes the simple way and the common sense way is the most accurate report of what the heck just happened.
Right, and they've been very clear on countless answers, and Karoline Leavitt has had to deal with this in the last few press briefings of repeated questions or different angles, and she'll shut that right down when she's given a clear answer, which she does 100% of the time. So, but what's nice about it too, it seems right out the gate that there seems to be a really good rapport between the White House press corps and the White House press secretary as well, and related staff, because we know that during Biden and Obama especially, there seemed to be this cloud of mystery of what was happening and not having access, and you rarely see the president, at least if you were in that in-town press pool. That has changed now with President Trump being so transparent in his administration. I think about also during COVID, he would have those daily press briefings. I mean, he really made himself open for questions, for up-to-the-minute information. And that's what we'll do here on the right side of history, cover all of that for you. And we hope our colleagues in the media will do the same. Some have not changed, some seem to be changing, so we'll see how that goes.
Exactly, and the lights are on there at the White House at 1:07 Eastern. And again, seeing a number of reports now that President Trump has secured the release of another detained American citizen who is being held in Belarus. So President Trump working, whether it's one American citizen at a time or all 300+ million of us in this great country, We're glad we have a common sense leader, the people's president, taking care of business from 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue.
Yes, it's an exciting time, a new dawn in America for our shining city on a hill, and something that President Reagan invoked, but now the apprentice leader, the citizen servant known as Donald John Trump, the 45th and 47th President of the United States, very similar to the Gipper, and had a press outreach and a memo regarding his birthday. We have celebrated 114 years of Ronald Reagan last week on February 6th. And interesting to see how, that route to the presidency. In modern times, we've mostly elected governors and senators, but rarely have those ascended to the highest office in the land, having not served in some form of political office. President Trump is included amongst the names of the likes of General George Washington, our inaugural holder of this office, or even General Dwight D. Eisenhower, the hero of World War II, who went on to serve as commander-in-chief. So it's a hard office to ascend to, but especially when you haven't held the office before, or even any other elected office.
Exactly. So the outsider, 45th president, and now the 47th president, obviously one of, if not the greatest president of all time. Of course, we can talk about President Thomas Jefferson, of course, and President Abraham Lincoln, but all in the same family of greatness. And that's what we see here right now, live on February 12th. It's Wednesday, 2 days from Valentine's Day, so got to get the cards and the gifts and all that ready to go for your loved ones out there. I know I do as well after work today. So hopefully my wife is not watching right now.
I believe you just admitted that, but
that's okay.
Great.
I mean, it's still okay. It's all good.
Oh yeah,
anyway.
Plenty of great companies around Auburn for that to happen as well.
That's 1:09 Eastern. Thanks so much for live streaming in with us wherever you're watching right now. Of course, those of you on Rumble right now and YouTube and X and Truth Social and everywhere, thanks so much. And definitely been reading some more of the chats and the comments, and we see you guys, and also thank you for watching as you do day in and day out here on RSBN Live. All right, so earlier, just to recap, so can you break down what happened with RFK Jr. and also Tulsi Gabbard?
Yes, so we had the cloture vote for RFK Jr., so that closed debate on the issue to move that then into a final vote. So that's what cloture means. They did reopen for discussion, which also can happen during cloture, but not during that vote specifically. So sometimes you see in the Senate when a vote is taking place and someone will try to interject and the clerk will kindly remind the rules. It's Robert's Rules of Order, and that debate cannot happen at that time. So it can seem a little confusing as you're watching proceedings, because they literally do a triple or quadruple check for membership. Now, again, you have to be in person to vote. This isn't Nancy Pelosi's Congress anymore where you could do a remote vote. You actually have to be on the floor for this, and that's why sometimes these people do miss votes if they have other obligations. Their first obligation, of course, is to represent their state, so I always wonder why some people have multiple missed votes, but I digress into this cloture vote for RFK. This moves him now for a scheduled final vote tomorrow to become the next Secretary of Health and Human Services. Right prior to that, Tulsi Gabbard had her final vote, 52-48. I'm actually looking at the Senate website to see how that final vote total broke down. It looks as if one Republican went along with the Democrats because there's a 53-47 split. This was 52-47, or 48, excuse me. Most of the Republicans did go along with Tulsi Gabbard to become the next Director of National Intelligence. We'll await her swearing in, most likely with the Vice President of the United States administering the oath.
It'll be great. We usually get that live here at the network. So RSBN Live, you can count on us, whether it's live on this channel right now, on this stream, or we post it and on various sites as well, from Rumble to YouTube, of course, Truth Social, X, and on. Now, the question is, just like how DOJ is doing a great job right now, and many departments are, as soon as RFK Jr. is the Secretary of Health and Human Services, what are we in for there? Like,
Yes.
How many things will happen right away under his leadership? And the same thing with DNI, the Director or the Department of National Intelligence with Tulsi Gabbard. Why don't we get ready to go to the White House press briefing room as everybody is situated. I believe the White House press secretary, Karoline Leavitt, will be stepping out any moment. As soon as she does, we'll go there live. But every time there's somebody that's confirmed and sworn in, then right away we're seeing a lot of things happen, like Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth.
Right. I mean, they hit the ground running. You know, he was there at the border himself. He's in Brussels, Belgium, meeting with the troops and doing PT with them, and also getting those reforms done, as well as a strategic strike on Somalia against ISIS targets. So there's no backing down. There's a meritocracy being brought back to the Pentagon. And how about Pam Bondi, the 87th Attorney General of the United States, suing the city of Chicago and the state of Illinois, its officials under Governor J.B. Pritzker and Mayor Brandon Johnson, who are holding back ICE's efforts to remove illegal aliens. They are violating Section 8 of U.S. Code 1324, and that's the illegal harboring of migrant aliens. They therefore, as far as borders are, Tom Homan is concerned, believes they could be arrested individually themselves. So we'll take this to court as an administration versus a municipality and a state. You don't want that to happen necessarily, but Pam Bondi saying that you should not push the Justice Department. They will follow through with enforcing the law. And it shows you that Alejandro Mayorkas and the former Attorney General, as well as President Biden, were simply dishonest with the American people and with Congress, saying that they weren't really sure that they could, in their words, overstep boundaries in the executive, because this administration is literally just adhering to and executing the law on the books.
Exactly. All right, so the Department of Homeland Security saying President Trump has made it clear illegal criminal aliens are no longer welcome in this country. Last week, DHS law enforcement continued removals of a number of criminals from American communities. You can check that out on X on the Department of Homeland Security page there, DHS.gov. Also seeing various reports that $59 million that was given to FEMA to give to New York City to house illegal migrants in high-end hotels has retrieved that money. So DHS has retrieved that $59 million.
Oh, fantastic.
So a lot of great things being done all across the board right now. At the end of the day, as John Strand and Carlos Sands and others have said, getting all of the cabinet appointments confirmed and sworn in, why is there a delay? Let's get it done.
Right. And Elon Musk really covered this well yesterday in the Oval Office with President Trump. There's nothing to hide. He told the press right there, and they had some decent questions. You know, how can you prove transparency with this, that, or the other, Social Security accounts and everything? And they actually have authorization to do the work they're doing because of the authority that President Obama invested in the federal government, and President Trump just enhancing that to look at where the waste and fraud has gone. So this is completely within the legal parameters of the White House. And Elon Musk said, I don't hide anything. And it's true. I mean, he's been very transparent with this as a special government employee. And I think it's just simply the deep state bureaucrats afraid of being caught ultimately. And that's why I think you have 60,000 people who are running for the door. And it's interesting, too, because the labor union in charge of all that for the federal workers are trying to sue the White House in order to keep them. But the workers are saying, we're voluntarily leaving. We're not being forced out here. This is a good idea.
And there was a little bit inside baseball yesterday about why President Trump chose Elon Musk. We'll get to that in just a second. Let's go to the White House right now.
On this very newsy day, to say the least. I have a couple of updates for you this morning, or this afternoon. As you know, this morning, the president spoke to President Putin of Russia. They spoke at length, and the president released a statement following that conversation in great detail. I can also confirm that the president just recently got off the phone with President Zelensky of Ukraine. His truth is as follows. I just spoke to President Zelensky of Ukraine. The conversation went very well. He, like President Putin, wants to make peace. We discussed a variety of topics having to do with the war, but mostly the meeting that is being set up on Friday in Munich, where Vice President J.D. Vance and Secretary of State Marco Rubio will lead the delegation. I am hopeful that the results of that meeting will be positive. It is time to stop this ridiculous war where there has been massive and totally unnecessary death and destruction. God bless the people of Russia and Ukraine. I myself just spoke to the president about these calls, and he told me to tell all of you They were very good calls, they were very positive, and the administration is wholeheartedly committed to a peace deal to end once and for all the Russia-Ukraine war. More on that later. I'm sure you'll have more questions to ask. This week, the president has continued to deliver on his promises to the American people. According to new polling that was released at the beginning of this week by CBS News, an overwhelming 70% of Americans said that President Trump is following through on what he pledged to do during his historic campaign. The poll also revealed that Americans see President Trump as a tough, energetic, focused, and effective leader fighting hard to improve their lives and our country. And yesterday, in particular, was a truly special day for the United States of America. Thanks to the great leadership of President Trump and the strong and tough leadership of President Trump, Mark Fogle, an American teacher detained by Russia, was returned to American soil and met with the president here at the White House last night. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and the rest of President Trump's incredible national security team helped negotiate the exchange that secured Mark Fogle's release. This event shows a good faith effort from Russia, and it's a sign, as I just said, that we are moving in the right direction to end this brutal war. Malphine Fogle, Mark's 95-year-old mother, was understandably very worried that she would never see her son again after his arrest in 2021. Mrs. Fogle was actually slated to join President Trump on stage at the July 13th Butler, Pennsylvania rally to speak out for Mark. And then the infamous assassination attempt against President Trump took place. But that day, before the rally, President Trump promised Mark's mother that when he returned to the White House, he would bring her son home. God saved President Trump's life on that day in Butler, Pennsylvania, and now Mark Fogle is back home safely with his family as a result. God is good. The president also continues to bring back common sense to our government. This week, he signed an EO to end the procurement and forced use of paper straws. Taxpayer dollars were wasted on these non-functional and massively unpopular products for no other reason than it made radical activists feel good about themselves. And on trade, President Trump continues to take bold action to protect America's critical steel and aluminum industries, much like he did in his first term. And the president signed proclamations to close existing loopholes and exemptions to restore a true 25% tariff on steel and elevate the tariff on aluminum to 25% as well. This administration believes these tariffs will protect our national security and put American workers first. And in the Oval Office yesterday with Elon Musk, President Trump took further action to make our federal government more efficient and effective. He signed an EO implementing the DOGE Workforce Optimization Initiative. Now agency heads will coordinate and consult with DOGE to significantly shrink the size of the federal workforce and limit hiring to essential positions only. The unaccountable bureaucracy will finally be reined in. On another important matter this morning, Senate Republicans continued to confirm President Trump's exceptionally qualified nominees, most recently Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard, who will be joining us later at the White House for her swearing-in ceremony. It's imperative that the remainder of the president's cabinet nominees are confirmed as quickly as possible. On another important matter this week, illegal alien criminals continue to be arrested and sent home as part of the ongoing mass deportation effort of the Trump administration. Just this week, 2 planes with 190 Venezuelan illegal aliens arrived in the Venezuelan capital from Fort Bliss, Texas. Here are some of the criminal illegal aliens who were arrested in the country this past week. ICE Atlanta arrested a citizen of Nigeria who had been convicted of money laundering. ICE San Antonio arrested a citizen of Mexico who had been convicted of assault. ICE Denver arrested a citizen of Mexico who had been convicted of aggravated assault. And ICE Houston arrested a citizen of Mexico who had been convicted of aggravated assault. Now, before I take questions, I would like to address an extremely dishonest narrative that we've seen emerging over the past few days. Many outlets in this room have been fear-mongering the American people into believing there is a constitutional crisis taking place here at the White House. I've been hearing those words a lot lately. But in fact, the real constitutional crisis is taking place within our judicial branch, where district court judges in liberal districts across the country are abusing their power to unilaterally block President Trump's basic executive authority. We believe these judges are acting as judicial activists rather than honest arbiters of the law. And they have issued at least 12 injunctions against this administration in the past 14 days, often without citing any evidence or grounds for their lawsuits. This is part of a larger concerted effort by Democrat activists and nothing more than the continuation of the weaponization of justice against President Trump. Quick news flash to these liberal judges who are supporting their obstructionist efforts. 77 million Americans voted to elect this president. And each injunction is an abuse of the rule of law and an attempt to thwart the will of the people. As the president clearly stated in the Oval Office yesterday, we will comply with the law in the courts, but we will also continue to seek every legal remedy to ultimately overturn these radical injunctions and ensure President Trump's policies can be enacted. So here in our new media seat today, we have Chris Pavlovsky, an entrepreneur who has a strong passion for protecting freedom of speech. Chris started the video sharing platform Rumble in 2013 with a mission of protecting a free and open internet from censorship by big tech and governments around the globe. The platform has always been a place for independent creators to share their authentic opinions, and they have always included President Trump, in contrast to the way he was censored by other platforms in years past. Since its founding, Rumble has grown exponentially, recently marking 67 million monthly active users. It's a lot of users. If you're watching right now and interested in sitting in this seat, you can apply, whitehouse.gov/new-media. With that, I will take your questions. And Chris, why don't you kick us off on this very busy news day?
Carolyn, thank you very much to you and President Trump. It's an honor to be sitting here in the new media seat for the White House press briefing and to be able to demonstrate why freedom of expression is so important. Rumble was the victim of censorship at the hands of multiple foreign governments. It's clear there are still many countries who oppose free speech and even target American companies. Can you describe what the administration will do to protect U.S. interests and values worldwide?
Sure. Well, thanks for the very important question. And I think that free speech and ending censorship, both here at home and also abroad, is an important part of President Trump's agenda. I think first, President Trump has led by example on this front as the leader of the free world, the President of the United States, with his show of access and transparency on a daily basis. The President takes questions from all of you almost every single day and really reveals what he's thinking and feeling, and I think that serves as a great example to the rest of the world. As for tangible actions that the President has signed, he did sign an executive order, I believe on day one, certainly within the first week of this administration, to restore free speech and stop government-sponsored censorship here at home. And the EO made it very clear that federal employees are not allowed to engage in any activity that would infringe upon the American people's right of free expression. So I think the President has led quite strongly on this. And I would just add, this is part of the reason we have a new media seat, to invite new voices into this room. Again, we're going to need to expand this room because so many people are interested, and we're very excited about that. It's a privilege to cover this White House, but we want all voices to be heard. So thanks for being us with here, Chris, and I hope you enjoy the briefing. Sure. Jordan.
Thanks, Caroline. Data out this morning showed that consumer prices were up across a variety of goods, and just before that report, though, President Trump called for lower interest rates. The Fed said it's holding rates steady to try and tamp down further inflation. So how would lowering rates help keep inflation in check for the American people?
Sure. Well, first of all, on the inflation point, we did receive those numbers, and they were worse than expected, which tells us that the Biden administration indeed left us with a mess to deal with. It's far worse than I think anybody anticipated, because unfortunately the previous administration was not transparent in where the economy truly was. We know people at this very podium told the American people that inflation was transitory and that it would go away. That was not the case. And now the last report of the Biden administration, as revealed today, shows that inflation is still about 4.5% higher over the past 3 months. This is an indictment on the Biden administration's mismanagement of the inflation crisis and their lack of transparency in addressing it. As for tackling inflation and interest rates, the president has made his position on this very clear. He wants interest rates to be lower, he wants inflation to be lower, and he believes that the whole of government economic approach that this administration is taking will result in lower inflation. I have said that from this podium many times. The president had record low interest rates and inflation rates in his first term. He believes that the economy can handle it and withstand it. And we're doing a lot to tackle the inflation effort on this front. It's a whole of government economic approach, and I've talked about what we're doing to tackle inflation quite a few times from this podium.
The reciprocal tariffs, that's going to come before Prime Minister Modi's visit tomorrow?
I do believe it will come before the Prime Minister's visit tomorrow, and I will let the President discuss the details on the reciprocal tariff front. But this is something he believes strongly in, and it's very simple logic as to why the President wants to impose reciprocal tariffs. It's the golden rule, which we all learned when we were growing up in school. Treat others the way you want to be treated. And far too many nations around this world have been ripping off the United States of America for far too long. And that's why the President believes this will be a great policy that will benefit American workers and improve our national security. JJ.
On Doge and the fraud claims, Elon Musk in the Oval yesterday gave us some information on that. We're just wondering if there's some proof, evidence. Is the White House willing to share evidence of those fraud claims, or can Elon Musk come to the briefing room and share material evidence of what he's talking about?
Sure. I would love for Elon Musk to come to the briefing room. That's why we had him go to the Oval Office yesterday, where I think he provided great answers. He was speaking in layman's terms, speaking common sense to all of you in the media, but also to Americans at home. But I would say especially to all of you in the media, because I think it's a real fallacy that there's this alleged lack of transparency when it comes to Doge. President Trump and Elon Musk have been incredibly transparent on what Doge is doing. There is an X account with the Doge handle. They are tweeting out what they are doing on a daily basis. They have a website where they are posting the receipts of the contracts that they are reviewing and the payments that they have stopped from going out the door. The secretaries of our departments have stopped from going out the door. And I would also say that before it was Elon Musk making our government efficient and accountable, it was some unnamed bureaucrat that none of you knew. Elon Musk is the richest man in the world. He's also now one of the most highly scrutinized men in the world alongside President Trump because of what he's doing and the access that he is allowing. So there's great transparency. As for the actual receipts, we are happy to provide them, and I actually brought some today because all of you know I love to bring the receipts. We have contracts upon contracts that we can send and provide this information to you. Let me be very clear. We are not trying to hide anything. We have been incredibly transparent, and we will continue to be. These are screenshots of contracts that Doge found across our government. This is a DEI contract, $36,000 for U.S. citizenship and immigration services. That is against the president's policies and his America First agenda. This is a $3.4 million contract, a Council for Inclusive Innovation at the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, Department of Commerce, another DEI contract that Doge identified. I can continue to go through these. Oh, I love this one, $57,000 for climate change in Sri Lanka. What is this doing to continue the interests of the American people? Absolutely nothing. These are the line items across the federal government that Doge is identifying daily. They're moving very fast. There's a lot of paper that we can show you, but we're happy to do it. This administration has been more than transparent about what Doge is doing. And here's one of their tweets that they posted about the mine. I believe this is in Pennsylvania, where the federal employee retirement system is being processed. Did anybody know this was even happening in our country before Elon Musk talked about it in the Oval Office yesterday? A lot of Americans didn't. So we are providing transparency and accessibility on a daily basis when it comes to Doge. And I also have a Doge daily report, if anybody would like it, on all of the things that they are identifying and finding. We're happy to provide this information to you. We're talking about it every single day.
Are all those things you just mentioned fraud, or are they waste, or are they just contrary to the president's policies?
I would argue that all of these things are fraudulent, they are wasteful, and they are an abuse of the American taxpayer's dollar. This is not what the government should be spending money on. It's contrary to the president's priorities and agenda. And again, we can continue to provide you the receipts for all of the fraud, waste, and abuse. And if anybody in here wants to argue that the federal government is not fraudulent in some capacity, be my guest, because I think the American people watching at home would beg to differ.
Caroline.
Mary.
Hey, more on the judges. Does the White House believe the courts have the authority to issue these nationwide injunctions?
We believe that the injunctions that have been issued by these judges have no basis in the law and have no grounds, and we will, again, as the President said very clearly yesterday, comply with these orders, but it is the administration's position that we will also ultimately be vindicated, and the President's executive actions that he took were completely within the law. They were constitutional, and we look forward to the day where he can continue to implement his agenda. And I would just add, it's our view that this is the continuation of the weaponization of justice that we have seen against President Trump. He fought it for 2 years on the campaign trail. It won't stop him now. Brian.
Yes. I want to go back to DOGE just for a second. Earlier, the subcommittee headed by Chairman Marjorie Taylor Greene, her and her staff discovered $2.7 trillion in improper payments to Medicare, Medicaid, overseas, to people who should not have gotten it. Some in this room might have missed that press conference. Can you elaborate on what the President is thinking at this point?
Well, again, that's another example. There's a very long list of the fraud, waste, and abuse that DOGE is identifying on a daily basis. Elon Musk also talked about yesterday about Social Security payments that are going out the door for people who are no longer with us, unfortunately. I would say that is certainly fraud. There's also a lot of contracts they've identified that, just as a hypothetical example, are $1 million, but only 500,000 went out the door. So where's the rest of that cash? And so that's the thing. Those are the things that DOGE is working on every single day. And I would just remind everybody in this room, this is what President Trump campaigned on doing. He's delivering on a promise that 77 million people elected him to do. James.
Thank you very much, Caroline. Two foreign policy questions, if I may.
Sure.
First, the statement that was released after this morning's phone calls identified Mr. Witkoff as the special envoy who will be part of the delegation that undertakes to resolve the Russia-Ukraine war. I had thought that that individual was General Kellogg, and so can you clear that up?
Sure, I'd be happy to. As you mentioned, the President, in his truth, following the phone call with Vladimir Putin, said that he has asked Secretary of State Rubio, the Director of the CIA, John Ratcliffe, our National Security Advisor here at the White House, Michael Watts, and Steve Witkoff to lead the negotiations. As for General Keith Kellogg, he remains a critical part of this team in this effort. He's played a tremendous role in getting the negotiations to this point, and he's very much still part of the Trump administration.
The other subject is Iran. I took note of President Trump's comments in his Super Bowl interview with our colleague Brett Baer to the effect that he wants to do a deal with Iran. However, that interview appeared after the supreme leader of Iran, the Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, had already ruled out any additional negotiations with the United States. So kind of a two-part question. A, what gives the President any confidence that Iran will come to the table? And B, more fundamentally, why is the President interested in doing a deal with Iran instead of doing everything he can, perhaps short of U.S. military intervention, to try and hasten the end of what many of his own supporters regard as an evil regime?
Well, the President has made it very clear that he will never allow Iran to have nuclear capabilities. That is a red line that he has drawn, and he will not allow that to happen. But you asked why President Trump wants to make a deal. I would remind you, he's the master of the art of the deal. He is America's deal maker in chief. He leads from a position of securing peace through strength. And I think time and time again already, in just 4 weeks, we have seen the President being able to negotiate successful deals with our partners, our adversaries all around this world. The release of Mark Fogle just last night is something that I think speaks to the President's deal-making ability. This is something that the Biden administration allegedly tried to do for 3.5 years. I think you all should go back and ask some of those Biden administration officials what they even tried to do and why weren't they successful. Because for 3.5 years, Mark Fogle sat in a Russian prison, and it took President Trump 3 weeks to get him back on American soil. There's nobody better at making deals than Donald Trump. Phil Wegman.
Thank you. Two foreign policy questions. Ukrainian President Zelensky has said after the war that he wants NATO membership or nuclear weapons. We heard Defense Secretary Hegseth say that NATO membership was unrealistic. What's the president's view on the other option, on a nuclear Ukraine?
I have not talked to President Trump about Ukraine's NATO membership or their nuclear capabilities. I would leave it to him to discuss. But I will tell you again that Secretary Rubio and also the Vice President, J.D. Vance, will be meeting directly with President Zelensky in Munich on Friday, and I'm sure they will provide a readout of that conversation and that discussion.
Question, given that this administration has called on Europe to take more responsibility for their own defense, I'm wondering, will the EU or any other European nation other than Ukraine be involved in these peace talks?
I don't have any European nations who are involved currently to read out for you. Certainly, the president has employed a very strong team or deployed a very strong team to continue these negotiations. And the fact that he was on the phone with both President Putin and President Zelensky today shows that he's very much involved in this effort as well.
And then just a follow-up, I guess.
Sure.
Should we expect the president to negotiate in person with Zelensky and Putin?
I don't have anything to read out on that for you today. Maggie, good to see you.
Thanks for taking the question. You talked about the transparency with Doge and Elon Musk's press availability yesterday. There is a conflict of interest law in place that says that people who have personal interests can't interact with government entities that could touch on those. Has President Trump signed a waiver for Elon Musk? Does such a thing exist? If it does, will you guys release it in the interest of transparency that he's committed to?
I have not seen the law that you are referring to. What I can tell you is that Elon Musk, as I've confirmed before, is a special government employee. He is filing the proper financial disclosure, and he is complying with all applicable federal laws. As you also heard Elon address this directly yesterday in the alleged conflict of interest, and he said everything he's doing is very public, and if you all perceive a conflict of interest, you're welcome to bring that up. And as the president said, if he feels like Elon is engaging in something that's a conflict of interest, he will tell Elon not to do that. And Elon also said yesterday that before he moves forward with anything, he consults with the President of the United States. So we're very confident with the ethics and the guardrails that have been put in place here. Caitlin.
Thanks, Caroline. I have a few things for you, but on the commitment by President Trump, he said that he and President Putin agreed to visit each other's respective nations. Are there any preconditions that President Trump has that President Putin must do before he goes and meets with him, withdrawing some forces, withdrawing all forces, anything like that?
Not that I'm aware of. That doesn't mean they don't exist, but I was just talking with the president in our national security team. I wasn't made aware of any conditions, but if they exist, I'm happy to provide those.
And on the president himself, he styles himself as this master negotiator. He is now deploying these negotiations, saying that they start immediately. We did hear from the Defense Secretary, Pete Hegseth, today saying that NATO membership is not realistic for Ukraine, and neither is returning to pre-2014 borders. Aren't they giving away bargaining chips before these negotiations have even started?
Again, I haven't talked to the president about Ukraine's NATO membership, and he appointed several individuals to negotiate on his behalf. He's directly involved in these negotiations as well, and I'm sure if you ask him that question in the near future, when you're able to, he'll give you an answer. I just don't want to get ahead of him on it.
And final thing for you, which White House official made the decision to bar the AP reporter from the Oval Office and the diplomatic reception room last night?
Well, first of all, let me just set the record straight. It is a privilege to cover this White House. It's a privilege to be the White House press secretary. And nobody has the right to go into the Oval Office and ask the President of the United States questions. That's an invitation that is given. And there are hundreds of outlets on this campus, many of you in this room who don't have the privilege of being part of that pool every single day and getting to ask the President questions. We reserve the right to decide who gets to go into the Oval Office, and you all have credentials to be here, including the Associated Press, who is in this briefing room today.
But isn't it retaliatory in nature is the argument, because the reason that the AP was barred, which they said was because they're not using the phrase Gulf of America, they're using Gulf of Mexico in line with their standards. And so the question here is this setting a precedent that this White House will retaliate against reporters who don't use the language that you guys believe reporters should use? And how does that align with the First Amendment commitment that you were just talking about?
I was very upfront in my briefing on day one that if we feel that there are lies being pushed by outlets in this room, we are going to hold those lies accountable. And it is a fact that the body of water off the coast of Louisiana is called the Gulf of America. And I'm not sure why news outlets don't want to call it that, but that is what it is. The Secretary of Interior has made that the official designation in the Geographical Identification Name Server. And Apple has recognized that. Google has recognized that. Pretty much every other outlet in this room has recognized that body of water as the Gulf of America. And it's very important to this administration that we get that right, not just for people here at home, but also for the rest of the world. Sure.
Thank you, Karoline. The prisoner exchange with Russia coming at the same time as the president is now announcing negotiations to end the war in Ukraine. The timing of that is hard to ignore. Was Ukraine discussed as part of this prisoner swap?
I was not involved in those discussions, so I can't comment on whether that came up or not. What I can say is that this was a very good deal for the United States of America and for the rest of the world. As you know, we have confirmed that the Russian who will be returning home very soon, Alexander Vinnik, was a non-violent crypto criminal, and as part of this exchange, he has forfeited more than $100 million that he obtained in that illegal crime. And in exchange, of course, we got Mark Fogle, who is a middle school teacher who kissed the American soil, but kissed the ground last night when he returned to the United States of America. It was a great deal and a great day for our country, and I think everybody, regardless of political affiliation, agrees with that.
And was Russia made aware ahead of time of the parameters that the administration and Secretary Hegseth was going to be announcing today?
The NATO perimeters? Yes. I'm not sure. You'd have to ask Secretary Hegseth in the Defense Department on that, since he announced them. Jackie.
Thank you, Caroline. Just to be clear, so when we're listening for a shift in position on U.S. policy, should we only listen to the president and maybe not the Secretary of Defense? Because what he outlined today would represent a shift in U.S. policy.
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying I speak for the President of the United States behind this podium, and I will let him discuss that.
Can you tell us any more about the next hostage releases? I understand that Americans coming out today.
Sure. I'm glad you asked. It speaks to President Trump's deal-making ability, and we can confirm the safe release of one American and two individuals from Belarus, one of whom worked for Radio Liberty. Out of respect for the privacy of these individuals, their request, we have no further details to announce on their identities, but we can confirm that one American was released today, and it's a remarkable victory on the heels of Mark Fogle returning to America last night.
Anything on who the U.S. might be releasing in exchange?
I don't have details on that at this moment.
Anyone in exchange?
I don't have details on that at this moment. I do know that these three individuals have been released and are on their way home to their respective countries.
Caroline, thank you so much. Can you explain how President Trump envisions the war in Russia and Ukraine coming to an end? Does he expect Ukraine to hand over all the territory in question?
Again, these negotiations are ongoing. I will allow the president to divulge any red lines that he may set, but I think as deals in the past have come to fruition, the president has proven one of the things that makes him a very effective negotiator is not revealing what he's anticipating from both sides, but he is at the forefront of these negotiations in addition to the very qualified individuals who he's tasked with speaking to both President Putin and President Zelensky.
And speaking of deals, a meeting with the President of the United States offers any foreign leader credibility. Was it part of the prisoner swap with Fogle that President Trump agreed to meet with Putin?
Again, I was already asked this question. I said I was not made aware of that, but we can certainly get you an answer on that. I'll check in with the NSC. Sure, Monica.
Thanks, Caroline. It's clear that this administration is dedicated to both truth and transparency. We know that with Doge, but we also know that because this administration recently announced it's going to declassify the assassinations of Martin Luther King Jr., JFK, and RFK. I'm wondering, is it likely that we're going to see more information regarding the assassination attempts on the president's life while he was on the campaign trail?
In regards to the assassination of the individuals you mentioned, President Trump signed that executive order directing the respective agencies to do it. I know that that process continues and is ongoing. He's committed to transparency in the declassification of these very important files that I think many Americans are not only interested in learning about, but also have the right to know about. As for the two heinous assassination attempts on the president's life, he's spoken to this publicly. I've spoken to him about it privately. And, you know, as he said publicly to all of you, he feels he has a right to know about further information about the individuals who tried to kill him, tried to take his life. And so if and when we get that information, I'll leave it up to the president to decide whether or not he would like to reveal it. But I believe in the effort of transparency that we've seen consistently from this president, he certainly will. Daniel.
Thanks, Caroline. I wanted to ask you about the $59 million that FEMA sent to New York City migrant hotels. Secretary Kristi Noem just put out a statement saying that she clawed back the full payment that FEMA activists unilaterally gave to NYC migrant hotels. She wrote, "Mark my words, there will not be a single penny spent that goes against the interest and safety of the American people." What does the response of the Trump administration send to any federal bureaucrats that are thinking about obstructing the president's agenda?
They will be held accountable. The president is signing executive orders daily, and he expects all officials across the administration, regardless if they are a political appointee or if they are a career bureaucrat, to adhere to the will of the American people and the 77 million Americans who reelected President Trump. He's here for a reason, and he is focused every day on implementing his administration's goals, and sending $59 million to a migrant hotel to house illegal immigrants when there are still people in North Carolina and California who have not received FEMA funding is not something that this administration is going to tolerate. Deanna.
Thank you so much, Caroline. One on New York and one on Russia, please. On New York City Comptroller Brad Lander is accusing DOJ of clawing back $80 million that was intended for New York City FEMA funding. Wondering if you've heard about that figure, if that figure is accurate, and why that money was taken back.
I have not heard about that figure. DOJ is moving very quickly, but I can get the receipts and gladly send them to you. I know that story is likely of great interest to the New York Post. John.
Russia, please. Sure. Is President Trump waiting for a kind of signal or an action from Putin to go to Russia? And would he be willing to go to Ukraine in the future?
I don't have any decisions to make on the president's potential visit to Russia or any in-person meeting at this time. John.
Caroline, two questions, one on foreign policy, one on domestic policy. Following up on the president's call that he had with President Putin, does the president view Russia, does he view President Putin as an ally, as a partner, as a competitor, or as an adversary?
I believe this nation views Putin and Russia as a great competitor in the region, at times an adversary, but as the president has said as well, he enjoys having good diplomatic relationships with leaders around the world, finding that common ground, also calling them out when they are wrong, and leading from a position of peace through strength. That's the president's greatest strength, and we've seen that again, time and time again.
And then, as you pointed out in your statement regarding the confirmation of Tulsi Gabbard, there was one Republican who voted against the nomination of Tulsi Gabbard. It was Senator Mitch McConnell. Similarly, how does the administration view Senator McConnell? Can he be a partner in the president's legislative agenda? Are you disappointed that he voted against not only Tulsi Gabbard, but also Pete Hegseth to be the defense secretary?
I think we're greatly disappointed in any Republican who chooses willfully to vote against the president's exceptionally qualified cabinet nominees and picks to lead his America First administration. Not a single Democrat swayed from voting against President Biden's nominees, and we know how many of them turned out. They turned out to be atrocious at their jobs, leaving America much worse than they were when they took the oath of office. And so I've said it repeatedly from this podium. I addressed it at the beginning of my remarks. We expect all Republicans to vote, to stay tough and strong, vote for President Trump's nominees so we can get to work and continue to work very hard to implement this president's agenda. Sure.
Thank you, Caroline. On South Korea is currently in a chaotic situation. How does the President Trump react to the current chaotic situation in South Korea? Secondly, if South Korea needs help from the United States, what role do you think the U.S. will play?
Sure. I haven't spoken to the president about the ongoing situation in South Korea. I would defer you to his previous statements. And I can also see if I can get you something new from the National Security Council, who I'm very confident the officials that are focused on South Korea are on this. I just haven't spoken to them about it, but I'm happy to provide that for you. Yes.
Thank you, Caroline. Does Elon Musk have power of the presidency?
Absolutely not.
Right. I asked that question. I asked that question because, the Democrats have been hurling insults at Elon Musk, hurling attacks, calling him President Musk. Most recently, Jamie Raskin, the congressman, took it a step further, calling for Musk's impeachment, saying that he somehow usurped the power of the presidency. What's your response?
It's utterly ridiculous. Elon Musk addressed this in the Oval Office yesterday. The president addressed it as well. Elon Musk is serving at the pleasure of the president, just like everybody else on this team. He takes directives directly from the president of the United States. And I think some of the comments that you referred to are nothing more than a failed attempt from the media and from Democrats to try to sow division in this White House. We saw them do it in the first term. We're not going to let them do it in the second term. This is a unified team who is working at the pleasure of the president to do what's right for the American people. I have one more quick housekeeping note before I leave you all today. The president wanted me to share with all of you that he had a wonderful meeting with King Abdullah of Jordan yesterday. They discussed many things, including the Gaza Strip and its future at great length. The king would much prefer that the Palestinians stay in place, with the additional land to be used for new development, which would greatly create jobs at levels never seen before. But the president feels it would be much better and more majestic if these Palestinians could be moved to safer areas. I would just add to that the president remains wholeheartedly committed to seeing peace in the Middle East, and our Arab partners in the region have been tasked with coming up with a peace plan to present to the president. That is ongoing. King Abdullah mentioned that yesterday. He also committed to accepting 2,000 sick children from the Gaza Strip, which the president called a beautiful gesture. So the administration continues to work with our Arab partners in the region. We stand closely with our ally Israel, and the president has presented this big, new, bold idea to secure peace in the Middle East, and he is not going to waver from that. And we look forward to seeing that goal of this administration achieved as well. Thank you very much, everybody, and we'll see you very soon. Have a great day.
Thank you.
White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt and staff knocking it out of the park once again. Some great questions, also some fake news questions by some big corporate outlets, but I mean, so much success in the last few days, and the way she handles herself so professionally, so articulately at the podium, especially talking about that success of Doge, is remarkable. Just an amazing day.
It was awesome. It's awesome to have a MAGA spokesperson, right? Somebody that is standing with President Trump and delivering the correct narrative of what's actually happening. She talked about transparency a lot through that White House press briefing, and when the reporters try and get her on those different angles, it's not going to work, because you can't bring a lie to truth and then expect there to be your narrative winning at that. The truth will always prevail. So we learned a lot today from that press briefing inside the White House. Beautiful live picture there of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, that President Trump spoke to both Russian and Ukrainian leaders today, so a move in the right direction. Also, we learned that Tulsi Gabbard will be sworn in for the Director of National Intelligence at the White House. So great to see a lot of things moving forward.
Oh, yes, very quickly. And as Karoline had mentioned in the press conference, some things are moving so fast that she might need an update or two to get back to certain press questions, and they are all in a positive direction. But exciting to see that Tulsi will be sworn in later today, and also these bilateral discussions taking place, including the King Abdullah of Jordan yesterday saying that he'll take 2,000 medically sick children as refugees. So really great news for the administration.
Exactly. And speaking of a press conference, there is one at 4:30 Eastern Time. The United States Attorney General Pam Bondi has made an announcement that there will be a presser at 4:30 at DOJ, the Department of Justice. You can see that right here on RSBN Live. Also, President Trump will be signing some more executive orders today at the White House. We heard a confirmation, an American citizen being released today as well on the heels of what happened yesterday. Your thoughts?
Oh, fantastic. It's promises made, promises kept, and we know with Mark Fogle's mother, she was supposed to speak, as Karoline mentioned from the podium during the press conference, at the J-13 attempted assassination at Butler, Pennsylvania. Unfortunately, she could not speak on it, but spoke privately to President Trump, asking that if he was successful to please bring her son home, and that did happen. She's 95 years young, and now more hostages being released. This is on the heels of Venezuelan hostages as well, American citizens being held hostage there, brought back to the United States. And of course, if the rest of the hostages aren't released by this Saturday at noon, per Hamas, there will be hell to pay. President Trump will do what's necessary, along with our partner, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in Israel, to get the job done.
So we'll see what happens there. That's a story we're watching this weekend. Also, we're hearing reports on Sunday, President Trump will be at Daytona 500, the great NASCAR race. So a lot of news, not only today, but through the week and through the weekend here at Right Side Broadcasting Network. We want to thank Tax Network USA for being a great sponsor. 800-357-1415 if you have any tax questions, or it's always concerning, if you missed a year, you want to have help to get it taken care of.
Right, you really do. And with April 15th right around the corner, protect yourself from the IRS and settle those back taxes now. You could do that by talking to the Patriot professionals at Tax Network USA, tnusa.com/RSBN, or why don't you give them a call over at 800-357-1415 and make sure you're not being taken advantage of by the IRS.
Exactly. Let's go to the patriotaddictdeals.com as well. The Trump combat knife. You see the QR code on the bottom right of your screen. We all know Robert likes to go to all the sites and buy all the products, which hopefully all of you guys can and do as well. But yeah, your thoughts about that site, man?
Oh, there's nothing like it. I was saying earlier that you need this knife for your MAGA office or your MAGA man cave, as I am composing myself at my residence. So please scan that QR code and claim your 30% off. Another great deal from patriotaddictdeals.com. That's RSBN 30. And it is limited edition because the stuff I've gotten from this site does go away, and then it takes a while to bring it back because this stuff is going out like hotcakes. So get that Trump combat knife. I have a couple of Trump knives myself from around the country and different artisans. So it's great to display that, and you might just be like, oh, wow, that's you mean business.
It's a very cool product, as are all the products on patriotaddictdeals.com. Let's go to Angel Paste as well. I know it's 2 days away from Valentine's Day, so most likely, unless there's a UPS overnight shipping that you can see right now on there, but angelpaste.com, a great product out of Spring, Texas. 10% off using the RSBN promo code. Robert, another great product.
Yes, and unisex products. I've had the Miracle Cream, and my hands went from dry to glowing in about less than 5 minutes. This is a Christian company based outside of Houston, Texas in Spring. They also have a natural mosquito repellent, and that's what's great with all their products. Non-GMO, no chemicals, so what's being absorbed through your skin is rich B vitamins and minerals that make your skin truly glowing and feeling great. Angelpaste.com, again, Christian-owned. They hire veterans, and they are America first. So thank you for your support, angelpaste.com.
And if you'd like to donate to Right Side Broadcasting Network as we approach the top of the hour, all you have to do is text RSBN to 801-801. So it's just texting RSBN to 801-801. Great to always do that, as well as we are continuing to expand here at the network. Also, the RSBN newsletter, always good to have that.
Oh, yes, for the updates right to your phone through the app or to your email, rsbnetwork.com/newsletter. And that's an extraordinary place to see our exceptional writers here at Right Side Broadcasting. So it's not just the two of us on the TV screen, some great writers going in depth on each and every issue as we keep pace with this extraordinary White House, this administration 23 days in, and the 119th Congress having gavelled into session on January 3rd. It's morning in America again, as you see that beautiful shot of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue and the snow-capped Washington, D.C. To look upon as we are getting into the waning days of winter.
Exactly. All right, so we'll see you in about 2 hours here on RSBN Live for the press conference coverage from the United States Attorney General Pam Bondi, who will have a press conference at the DOJ. So that coverage starts at 4 o'clock Eastern. If there's any breaking news from now until then, we'll be here on the set and share that with you. Also, you can follow us on various social media platforms. So for all of us here at Right Side Broadcasting Network, for Robert McNeely, who's been holding down the fort all day, man.
Oh, well, you held it down so well last night, so it's nice to tag team with my great partner in crime here, Matthew Alvarez. No question about it.
Thank you so much, and thank you guys for watching. We'll see you in about 2 hours.
Hey y'all, it's Silk from the Diamond and Silk Chit Chat Live Show. Look, don't forget to check me out right here on RSBN Network. Be sure to watch the show on Right Side Broadcasting Network, and I want you to support Right Side Broadcasting Network. Yes, it's imperative that you do so, okay? I look to see y'all soon. Bye-bye.
I'm excited to announce that we're having our first ever mega sale on overstock clearance and brand new products. For example, save over 50% on this season's flannel sheets. Queen size only $59.98. Kings only $69.98. They sell out fast every year, so order now. Save 20% on our brand new My Crosses. They're designed in the likeness of the one I've worn every day for over 20 years. They come in men's and women's, and they're made right here in the USA. Get our 2025 6-piece My Towel sets for only $29.98. Our initial quantities are extremely low, so get them now before they go. And our best-selling standard My Pillows, just $14.98. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use this promo code to take advantage of our first ever mega sale. But wait, remember that $75 free shipping rule? Well, that ship is sailed because right now, every order ships absolutely free.
Welcome to Right Side Broadcasting Network, your trusted conservative news outlet. At RSBN, we deliver the truth when the mainstream media falls short. Since 2015, we've proudly broadcasted every single one of President Trump's iconic MAGA rallies, bringing you the excitement and energy live before anyone else. By watching RSBN, you get an unfiltered front row view of the action on the ground. We interview the crowds to give a voice to millions of Americans just like you. We show you President Trump's speeches in their entirety, free from interruptions and censorship. We cover the stories that matter to you with the integrity and passion you deserve. Thank you for choosing RSBN as your home for America First News. Together, we stand strong, united, and informed. So join us and be part of the right side of history.